The guy asked the princess if she believed in love. She made a surprised face and answered the question with a question, wondering if he's drunk. Kirona was the first princess of the Mahatha's empire. The girl reminded him that there was a punishment for drinking alcohol while on duty, and she began to threaten to report him to Marona. The guy replied that there was nothing to scare the head of the knights, the one who does not even obey the princess. It was Kirona's personal knight, Jade Eclipse. The girl made a terrible grimace on her face. I was surprised at his audacity that he was aware of his disobedience to the imperial person openly and did not repent. The guy retorted that she said she loved his impudence. Jade insisted that he was not drunk. Moreover, he assured that he had never drank alcohol in his life. The girl made a thoughtful face. The princess noticed that the guy was acting a little strange today. What if James Eclipse himself suddenly asks if she believes in love? Kirona asked the knight mockingly if he was thinking of getting married. He was indignant at her assumption. The guy held the girl by the shoulders, blocking her sharp attacks. I asked her not to make such movements because you need to be more careful when your stomach is not empty. She asked not to talk about the child as if he had eaten lunch. James asked him to forgive him for not being able to remember the word pregnancy. He asked when he told her about his decision to get married. The girl said that she thought it because of his question. She reminded him that he would turn 22 this year, the best age to start a family. In the Mahatha's empire, on its lands where the events we described unfold, matriarchy reigned. According to local law, a man must either be officially recognized as the biological father of the child, or get married in order to join, albeit with difficulty, your wife's family. The girl recalled what he told her, that recently young knights are increasingly dreaming of getting married or becoming the father of a child. The guy asked why their conversation even went in such a direction, and he still asked the girl to answer his question directly. The princess thought about it. Then she replied that she considered belief in love to be sheer nonsense. She said that he himself knows that this is not typical for her, that he himself constantly insisted that he did not believe in love. Jade said that he still believes in love. His face glowed and his gaze was dreamy. Kirona started yelling at him. After all, before he said something completely different, but the guy assured that everything is different now. The girl asked what it all meant. James said that now he wants to go east and catch the dragon. In this way, he intended to win fame and honor. The guy said with confidence and pride that this path would lead him to the position of head of the knightly order. The girl asked him what the connection was between love and honor. She reminded that expedition was leaving tomorrow. But the guy claimed that this was important to him, and he's going to take a long vacation, and the girl wondered who would protect her when he was not around. The knight said that for this she has Marin and Zelda. The girl asked if her new lover would turn out to be a murderer. In this case, he advised her not to meet anyone until his return. The guy assured that the former princesses would not do anything, because he had intimidated them enough. The princess said that she would soon have a child, and it won't be easy for her in the near future. Jade held his head, sighing. He claimed that this circumstance worries him most of all. He forbade her to drink even a drop of alcohol, instructed Zelda to monitor her medication intake. Until the birth was allowed, he was forbidden to ride a horse. He said that even if there is no appetite, but the girl interrupted him on this, arguing that perhaps his absence is even for the better. Then she asked the guy more seriously that he was really leaving her to the mercy of fate. He confirmed this with a sad face. The girl said that while he was gone she might die, but he assured her that this should not happen. She said that he knew perfectly well that she might not survive the next fever, but the guy assured her that he would return in time. The girl said that everyone knows about her death. They don't know when it will come. The guy recalled that over the past 5 years he had never been late. He asked to be allowed to say goodbye. The princess silently looked at Jade for a long time with wet eyes, but she held back all her emotions. The knight, standing on one knee, bowed to Kirona. He wished her an easy birth. He insisted that he wanted to be with her all the time. I wished her not to get sick and take her medications on time. The girl glared at him. The guy touched her round belly. He promised that he would pray for both of them. I wanted her and her child to always be safe. The princess was thinking. He always looked at her stomach with hostility. But apparently he still didn't hate the child. And now the guy pressed himself against her stomach and said that Dad would be back soon. The princess pulled back and began to shout at the knight so that he should not joke like that. That since she forgives him everything, he has never learned to see the boundaries of what is permitted. She reminded him that he wasn't even married yet. And in this case, all sorts of unnecessary gossip may arise. But the guy claimed that he was still not going to get married. Jade reminded the princess that she herself was going to entrust the child to him as soon as she gave birth. And it is he who will dress him, hug him, rock him in his arms, and soothe him while crying like a real father. The girl calmed down and said that she was simply afraid that someone might misunderstand them. She admitted that she herself doesn't know exactly who the biological father is, but it's definitely not him. The guy said that he knew all this very well, but it didn't matter to him because the child was still a princess, and this meant that it was the same as his own. Kirona wanted to tell the knight something else, but he, continuing to stand on one knee in front of her, asked her not to say anything more. The guy gently touched the fingers of her hand, and then he brought her brush, kissing her. He said that no matter what else she wanted to tell him, he promised to listen when he returned back. Half a year later, on one of the sunny and clear days, the head of the knightly order made a report to the empress. He said that the current composition of the detachment has the smallest number of victims. He also reported that they had recovered a lot of treasures. The man's face was covered in battle scars. It was Marin Da. A tear appeared on his cheek. He reported that, however, Jade Eclipse was missing. He insisted that they could not find his body. 5 years have passed since then. The girl asked why I was passing by again. She assured that this candidate was prettier than the others, but the princess said that she did not like him. The brunette assured that his face was not to the princess's taste. It did not mean at all that he could not become a good father for Her Highness Julia. It was Zelda Black, escorting Corona's knight. She asked the princess to think bigger, reminding who the applicant was already in the account, banging his fist on the table. Kirona drew Zelda's attention, that she saw in her an unscrupulous person who decides the future of her daughter according to her taste in men. The princess admitted that because of those she did not like, she felt a sense of discomfort. The knight asked if there were any men whom Her Highness considered handsome. Kirona asked her to look at Yuli. What if a person similar to her appears, that she will confirm the level that corresponds to a girl? The knight began to wave her arms. She claimed that Her Highness Yuli behaves this way now because she is a copy of her mother. And since it is difficult to find her biological father by her face, unnecessary fuss occurs. Zelda argued that if she at least tried, there would be hope that someone could take the place of her real father. The princess argued that the applicant would still not be able to cope. Her Highness claimed that she would die soon. Therefore, it is necessary to find a plausible father by any means necessary. Face, family, condition, character. Everything about him should be ideal. The knight decided since Her Highness Corona started talking about it. She reported that her daughter has recently been regularly interested in the identity of her mother. Zelda reported that the girl used to wander around Corona's office alone. She involuntarily shuddered. The knight assured that the girl was smart beyond her years, and the fact that a person very similar to herself is walking on the door. She probably already guessed who her mother was. The girl told Her Highness that she could not hide forever. She replied that she knew all this, but she couldn't stay close to the child for long, and if Yuli gets attached to her, it could hurt her. The princess assured that the girl, fortunately, was a member of the imperial family. Therefore, there will be someone to take care of her. Princess Corona stated that therefore Yuli is not her daughter, but a child of the Mihada's empire. Zelda even regretted that she herself raised the topic of this conversation. And the princess, lying on the sofa, answered her that since she understood everything, she sent her to mind her own business. The knight was against ending the conversation. She claimed that they had such a fun conversation, and she asked me to tell you about the ideal type for the role of a father for a girl. The princess said that he should be handsome, of large build and with clear facial features. The knight quickly wrote everything down in a notebook with a pencil. Corona added that a man should not be arrogant, which is necessarily faithful and obedient like a dog, and his hair is preferably not a bright dark brown color. The brunette specified the eye color of the desired candidate. The princess thought dreamily. She answered that he should have dark blue eyes closer to indigo color. The princess remembered the moment when she said goodbye to Jade, how she straightened his light brown bangs from his dark blue eyes. The knight found it strange that a certain person came to her mind, remembering that in the distant past there was just such a guy among her younger colleagues, and his name was Jade Eclipse. Corona claimed that living a life where death was already predetermined, she realized one truth, that even if one person disappears, Life will continue to go on as usual. And no matter how much a person suffers, in the end everyone will certainly adapt to it. She was aware that she was still sad and missed him. But she didn't see the point, because she expected her own death. The princess stood at the window. It had been 5 years since she last saw the guy. She asked Zelda to tell her what kind of person Jade Eclipse was. The knight said that he was madly in love. She asked Her Highness if she really had no feelings for Jade. Kirona told her that now it doesn't matter anymore, that the guy is dead and she will die soon, and when everything happens, everything will end. The knight assured that she simply hated it when the princess spoke like that. She assured that it would be better if he went with them to look for a cure, and then they could help in case of an unforeseen situation. The knight said that Jade was wrong when he left Her Highness alone and went to his death. The conversation was interrupted by a servant entering. Both girls turned their heads in his direction at the same time. He called out to Her Highness that Mr. Jade Eclipse had returned. They gave the order to open the gate. Little Yuli was surprised that the guest had arrived again. She looked at the group of men from afar, dreaming about what gift they brought her this time. The girl from her hiding place gazed at the newcomer. She noted that today's guest is much younger and more beautiful than all the previous ones. The bag that the baby was leaning on began to slide to the side, and the girl screamed and rolled. Men rushed to her aid. She closed her eyes in fear, and when she secretly opened it, she was already in the arms of that newly arrived stranger. He called her Corona, but the guy next to him assured Jade that it was not her. The girl, completely emboldened, introduced herself. "My name is Yuli," and she was very surprised that he might not know her. The knight said that he was late for the performance. He said that he was the legal escort of Her Highness Corona, that he was leaving on a military campaign, and now he has returned home. He assured that they had met before, when she was still in her mother's belly. The girl looked at him with eyes wide open in surprise, full of delight. Yuli realized that this man might know about the one who gave birth to her. She said that means he is not their guest. The guy didn't understand what she meant. The knight commander was in a hurry to say something to Jade, but the girl demanded to answer her question. Is he a guest or not? Jade replied that if he correctly understood the meaning of this word, then he was exactly that. The girl asked that he would also like to become her father. The guy replied that this was not so because God might be angry at his lies. He carried the girl away in his arms. The knight said that he had to do something first, however. Yuli innocently asked him again. Princess Corona hurried to meet the guy. Zelda was behind the mistress, covering her mouth with her hand out of excess emotion. The baby, being in the guy's arms, pressed to his chest, heard the rhythm of his rapidly beating heart. She realized that he was nervous. The princess stopped at a respectable distance in front of Jade. She asked angrily why he came only now. The knight said that he came because he loved her. In the Mahadas Empire, when Princess Corona was 12 years old, she lay on the bed and complained that she was hot. Called someone for help. He took her in his arms. He asked how much pain she was in. She said it was very painful. But according to the mother, members of the imperial family should not cry. The hooded creature told the girl that it was okay to cry, that she's still 12 years old. He kept his dark hand on her forehead. He said that her body seemed to be on fire. The child asked who he was, and she grabbed the cloak with her hand, demanding an answer from him. The creature replied that he was always curious to know what she looked like. It turned out that the young princess exceeded all his expectations. He stroked the girl's head. He said that she was much more charming and sweeter than he previously thought. The princess shrank all over from these touches. The entity said that he liked her so much that he would like to take her to him forever, so that only he could admire her. The girl asked who he even was. Standing by the bed, the girl doctor spoke disappointing words to the empress. What is tetra fever, and at present it is incurable. The girl's mother began to yell at the best doctor in the empire. How dare she treat her daughter with such disdain? It was obvious that the girl might have caught a cold while playing in the morning, but the doctor assured that she could not lie right in front of Her Highness, and asked if she knew what kind of disease it was. The girl heard this entire conversation. The doctor said that tetra fever is also called the Whisper of 5 Demons. This was the first disease in history that included 5 stages of development. It is impossible to predict an increase in temperature. In this case, the interval between attacks can be no more than a year. The doctor stood by the princess's bed and told her serious things, which in addition is everything that is known about the disease. This is that, with the 5th fever, comes death. The girl asked Emma the reason for her honesty. She assumed that it was Mother who could have ordered that one. But the doctor said that the mother was against their conversation, and she herself insisted on him. The woman said that since everything is predetermined, it is better to be informed in advance, that they have no right to deprive her of knowledge about her own illness just because she is still very young. Emma said that this was her medical opinion, and she bowed to the girl. She had a look of hopelessness on her face. Kirona repeated the name of her illness, Whisper of 5 Demons. She realized that that day it was the demon that came for her. The girl asked Emma, from her medical point of view, how much time can you live with such a disease? The doctor, after a pause, replied that the princess would live until she was 25 at most, but she should pull herself together. And so it turned out that at the age of 13, the princess's life completely changed, and now she couldn't call it life at all. The maid stood at the door blocking the girl's opportunity to go out. The princess asked Marie to explain to her clearly and convincingly why should she skip the rain discipline class. The maid said that Her Majesty was worried about her daughter, but the girl was surprised that her mother was afraid that the book might eat her. Marie hesitated. She said that more than a year had passed since the last attack, and no one could know when the girl's temperature would rise again. Corona started screaming. She asked the maid to look at her. She asked if she looked weak and sick. Marie didn't answer, and the girl asked for an answer. Does she look like someone who is about to die? The maid placed her hand sympathetically on the princess's shoulder. She told Her Highness with a sad face that she too was not happy about all this. She said that she remembers how bright the girl was before her illness, and how many things I wanted to bring to life. She simply couldn't believe that everything could collapse at once. The Empress had previously told her daughter that she needed to be appointed heir to the throne as soon as possible. That unlike herself, her daughter has unsurpassed abilities in military affairs, and she will be able not only to defend the empire, but also to spread their influence far beyond its borders. Corona confirmed the truth that she was the first princess of the empire, and she assured that if rumors spread about her fatal illness, they would cause them a lot of headaches and troubles. Marie was crying, and the girl asked her not to treat her as if she were already dead, because she was still here among living people. And at the age of 15, instead of a fever, the girl was visited by someone else. Then she slept peacefully in her bed. But I heard a crash and woke up. She thought that since she did not have a temperature, then this was not that person. And she turned over to the other side. The steel of the sword blade flashed. The girl jumped back asking who he was. The sword stuck next to her leg. The hooded guy said that only a fool would reveal his identity if he intended to kill a member of the imperial family. At that moment, the girl was amused by the realization that it was not the fear of death that arose inside her, and not even longing for her usual life or regret that her life is about to be lost. She had the opportunity to end her extinguished life, and it gave her a feeling of freedom. She saw the guy raising a blade over her. The girl believed that it was better for her to leave like this in order to lighten the burden for her mother. She tried so hard to hide her daughter's illness, but then she heard a sharp call by name. They asked her if she was okay, and why didn't she evade her attacker or call for help. In her room, a guy stood with a baton in his hand and regained his breath, and the hooded one was already lying flat on the carpet next to her bed. The guy said that he would now go and call the security for help, but then he changed his mind because the scoundrel could come to his senses at any moment. The girl asked him why he saved her. The guy froze at this question. The princess began to yell at him with tears in her eyes that no one asked him for help. But he answered her that everything was obvious, that all living people want to stay alive. The princess asked his name, the one who came to her at night instead of a fever. A guy with bright hair introduced himself to Her Majesty. Francis. This guy became Corona's first love. The guy asked Her Majesty to always be with him. He was a beautiful man like a flower, and despite his low status, for the girl he was a wonderful knight from a fairy tale. He said he didn't want anything else, that she is the only one he needs. His eyes shone with happiness, and the guy was always next to the princess. He was telling her what she so desperately wanted to hear. At 16, the princess fell in love. The girl was sitting with the doctor at the tea table. Emma asked the princess what good happened, seeing how she was all shining. Corona admired, considering them beautiful, the flowers in the vase. They appeared here in the morning next to her bed. The maids were already whispering in the corners that Her Highness and Francis actually began a relationship. The doctor was waiting for an answer from Corona, and she dreamily looked at the flower and carefully touched its petals. She said that the name of the flower translates as permeating time, and considered it romantic. Emma was surprised that Her Highness began a relationship with this chamberlain, but the princess pulled her back. She asked the doctor if she could get pregnant. She was surprised by this question, and she answered that everything was quite possible. After all, the girl has already had her first period, which means her reproductive system is normal. She clarified with what intention she suddenly asked such a thing. The princess confirmed to the doctor that she wanted to have a child. She replied that this was unacceptable for her. After all, pregnancy and childbirth itself will become a great stress for the princess's body. This applies even to healthy women. The girl said that she knew all this, but she wasn't afraid. She had a determined and brave look. She added that she would die anyway. Emma asked the girl what would happen in a few years, after the arrival of the third fever, reminded that the girl was only 16, and that she was still so young. The girl began to scream, that the longer she waits, the less time she will be able to spend with her child. Therefore, I must do everything as soon as possible. The doctor asked the princess whether this was her personal opinion, or whether Francis suggested it to her. The girl said that the guy had no idea about her illness. After all, it was an imperial secret. Hirana used to think that she was completely powerless, and she believed that after her death the light would go out. But she believed that a child changes everything. After all, he could live even if she was no longer around. The princess wondered what would become of Francis after her death. He will probably become weak from melancholy and lose all meaning in life. And envious people will take the chance to kick him out of the palace. But if a child were born, Francis could be recognized as his father, and then he would receive completely different opportunities. Emma wanted to object to the girl, but she interrupted her, having said that she likes this option best. Kirana claimed that this child would become her true trace as proof that she lived in this world. Soon the princess had a younger brother and sister, and she understood the significance of their birth into this world. When the girl met her mother, she congratulated her with a sour face. The mother just looked down at the girl and, without answering, walked past her. The imperial family were the feudal lords of the Mahada's empire, and in order to rule this place, at least 5 heirs were needed. The empress already had 3 successors, not counting Kirana, and if you add 2 newborns, then the required number becomes available. And the princess realized with sadness that her place was ideally filled by her mother's recently born children, and the mother herself was finally able to abandon her eldest daughter. The guy asked Her Highness if she was okay. He was worried about her unhealthy appearance, but the girl assured that she was just a little tired. But the chamberlain saw that it was not a matter of fatigue. He claimed that he could see her bad mood. She started to make fun of her. She said that she saw no reason for that at all. After all, she had 2 younger ones, and now there will be 6 of them in the family. Hirana said that the more blood relatives, the better. After all, they can support each other. Francis claimed that they also posed a threat to her, but he asked her not to worry. He recalled that she was the Empress's most valuable child. The princess closed his mouth with a slam. She whispered to him that even the imperial palace had ears. The guy said that if it helps rid her of the threatening expression on her face, then he is ready to take such a risk. The chamberlain closed his eyes with pleasure and began to kiss the girl's palm. She was surprised by his courage and impudence. Then, having made up her mind, she threw herself on his neck. She told Francis that he didn't care what kind of person she was. The girl knocked the guy onto his back and was already above him. She said that she wanted to make a child with him. The guy was surprised. And at that moment, the girl thought of the flower Dwayne that Francis had given her. This flower meant love beyond time and space. And time and space are the 2 axes of the universe, and no one was able to change this. The girl thought that her love with Francis was exactly the same as that symbolic flower. The couple kissed, surrendering to the sudden surge of feelings. Even the strongest knight will not protect his beloved if he is far from her. And if the greatest wizard turns back time, this will not help avoid the death of his beloved. The girl thought that that small and fragile flower looked like Francis himself. Her hair was scattered across the green grass of the lawn, that he contradicted such a strong judgment. And just that one thing made him absolutely beautiful. The girl thought that everything would be fine, even if the grandiose language of flowers did not come true. The princess spoke words of love to her chamberlain, and again their soulful kiss took place. The girl asked if the guy loved her. There was a sound of metal. Francis's dagger pinned to the ground the flower that had just been on the princess's head. The guy replied that God saved him from this. Francis was on top of the girl, leaning on his hands. He was surprised at her naivety that she believed in these stupid feelings. He laughed openly in the princess's face. But I didn't expect such strength from a fragile girl. He didn't take into account that Her Highness had outstanding martial arts skills. And very soon the knights, attracted by the noise, hastened to the aid of the princess. They tied his hands like a criminal, and the girl was surprised that she didn't even try to justify herself. The girl reminded him that he had recently spoken to her about his love, and he mocked her in response, surprised that she believed this nonsense so easily. Francis claimed that he lost his entire family to the Empress, and after that his whole life went downhill. The Chamberlain continued to verbally kill the girl. He said that love is nothing, it was so easy to fabricate it. The guy was kneeling in front of the princess with his hands clasped behind his back, but he continued to mock her in her face. He said that in the end even Her Highness believed his skillful play on feelings. Francis argued that it is not warm feelings that fill meaning but something stronger, such as revenge, hatred, obsession, greed. The princess was angry with the guy, calling him bad words, but he assumed that people would consider his plan a failure. But they are unlikely to dare to say this to the girl directly in the face. The guy said that she personifies the image of a girl filled with love, who is ready to give her heart, that she didn't even realize that they had come to kill her, that her despair and contrite appearance were simply an amazing sight for him, and he assumed that it turned out even better than the plan of revenge that he had previously conceived. The girl expressed her doubts that he managed it. After all, he simply did not have enough patience, but he could have done a much more significant act. The princess held the guy's face. She assured that she had completely succumbed to the deception, and she loved him much more than he could imagine. Kirana said that she even wanted to give birth to a child from him and make him an heir. And in this case, his revenge would be the most ideal in the history of the empire. The girl brought her face closer to the guy. She asked whether revenge does not imply the deprivation or destruction of something important. She assured him that feelings were not important to her at all. The princess said that since he was going to die soon, she wanted to share her secret with him. She whispered to him that she was terminally ill. The guy looked at her dumbfounded, and the girl asked if he now regrets that he was in a hurry. The princess lost interest in her former chamberlain, and when she left, she asked the knights not to torture him too much. The guy howled and said that she was lying to him. The princess's face turned stone, and Francis was led away by the arms of 2 knights. Rain poured down from the sky mercilessly. Kirana found shelter in the stables. She thought about the guy's last words and agreed that they were right. The princess agreed with his opinion that love cannot become the meaning of life. What if you think about it, it wasn't love that preserved her miserable existence. She sat right on the floor of the stable, hiding her face. The girl admitted to herself that what made her endure was an obsession with life itself. She admitted to herself that she didn't really want any kind of relationship, but simply had a desire to exist. The horse next to the princess neighed and began to touch her by the hair on her head with its lips. The girl knew this noble animal and called him by name. Kirana got up from the floor. She began to talk to Molly. She asked the horse for forgiveness for not coming to her for so long. The girl apologized for leaving the animal alone. I caressed her on the withers. She said that she should have come to her earlier, showing a persistent character. Then the girl wrapped her arms around the horse's neck, hugging it. She said that it was not worth giving up on herself just because others had already abandoned her. She didn't want to die. A desperate desire pierced the girl's heart every night and did not allow her to sleep. Until this moment, she had not admitted it to herself. After all, it was clear that a person suffering from tetra fever would inevitably die. And there was no one in the world who could say otherwise. But now the girl didn't care, because she herself had to become such a person. Kirana hugged and kissed her favorite horse since childhood. She had already decided for herself that she would not give in to the disease so easily. The girl said that she had to find a cure and save herself, even if you have to go to the ends of the world. The princess told the horse, continuing to stroke it, that she breathed just like everyone else and she didn't want people to treat her like a corpse. She claimed that she would no longer wait patiently for the demon to come to take her away forever. And that very night, as if waiting for her, a second attack came. The girl was lying in her bed and the demon was sitting next to her. When she came to her senses, she immediately noticed his presence and instinctively grabbed the dagger. The demon greeted her. Kirana, threatening with hostility, pointed the tip of her blade at the neck of the uninvited guest. He leaned back a little in surprise. The demon assured that he would not harm her today. He asked her to lower the blade. He claimed that it was too dark in here and she might accidentally get hurt. The princess asked not to lie to her. After all, he is the demon that came for her soul. The demon asked if her temperature had dropped a little and how she was feeling. Kirana asked what he wanted to do. She was surprised that he still considered her a child. The creature asked him to forgive him for not thinking ahead, and the girl noticed to herself that for a demon he was too polite. She asked him how he got here. The demon answered through the window, pointing with his gaze at the open doors. The princess didn't believe him. She claimed that this was the top floor, and the perimeter is guarded by reliable and selfless knights. He answered the girl that he had some abilities, and the girl was surprised that it really was a demon, and she asked if he was really going to take her with him. The entity touched the princess's face, caressing her cheek. He said he wanted to take her away. The girl shuddered, but he added, smiling, that the time had not yet come for this. Kirana defiantly looked the demon straight in the face. She said that he would never be able to because she herself would not allow him. The hooded demon smiled. He told the princess that she was still a very interesting girl. He asked her to try to hold out until the end. He said that he really hoped that everything would be so. But Kirana couldn't understand what was wrong. Oddly enough, it was as if she was supported. But then she doubted that the entity wanted to support her. Surely he meant that her end would come anyway, and he wanted her to try to fight. The princess understood that he was a demon that fed on her suffering, but she was not going to be obedient and submit as he wished. She decided to find out more, and she said that she almost died and not at all because of illness. After all, if she does not die from a fever, then he will not be able to achieve his goal. The demon said he knew about Frances, that he's always watching her to protect her until he takes her with him, and he reached out to her with his hand. He insisted that she needed to forget that guy, and he promised that only good things await her from now on. He held her tightly by the shoulder. Kirana looked boldly into his eyes. She told him not to make her laugh. After all, no one can know the future, that even she could not imagine that she would live in anticipation of death, and therefore she doubted that he could know that only good things awaited her or not. The demon asked if she was afraid, and how she is able to try to find hope in the face of her misfortune. But the princess was in a situation where anyone would be imbued with the creature that was nearby. Even if it was a demon that pushed her into the abyss of suffering, she remembered those words. A horse galloping through a storm is not afraid of the wind. A fish caught in a raging stream is not afraid of the waves. And now the demon was pronouncing them to her, holding her by the shoulders. The princess was surprised that the demon was quoting the text of the blessing, but he said that he was not very religious, that I just somehow heard from someone. The girl was surprised that the entity was reading lines from the Holy Scriptures, but she was thinking about performing an exorcism if she didn't find a cure. But he assured her that there would be no more talk. It is clear that she is already tired of the prolonged fever. The girl said that she did not want to sleep, but he had a different opinion. She asked what the meaning of that passage was. Kirona said that she also studied the blessing, but had never seen anything like it. The demon answered her that it means she does not need to be afraid. She didn't understand what exactly. He answered, "Whatever it is." The girl voiced to her mother her decision to go east in search of a cure. She was surprised at this act because even the cause of her illness was not known. The Empress reminded Corona that she was her firstborn. She said that she doesn't know what everything looks like from the outside, but she insisted that she never gave up or abandoned her. The mother believed that if a cure existed, it would have already been found, that even now she is making every effort for this. The woman reminded her daughter that she was sick with an incurable disease, and for more than 1,000 years not even the reason for it has been found. She assured that this was a disease in the face of which even the doctors of the imperial family, Emma Hugin, gave up. The girl confirmed that she knew all this. She said that that's why she was going to act on her own, holding the hilt of the dagger in her belt with her hand. She assured that the doctors only repeated that they were very sorry and apologized, and magicians claim that they are conducting tests to obtain medicines. The girl realized that both of them were simply procrastinating, filling their pockets with her mother's gold. She understood that, moreover, after the birth of her sisters, her mother completely stopped doing anything to solve the problem with her eldest daughter. The princess mentally understood her choice. After all, a member of the imperial family who is unable to live has lost all value for it. And the girl, Understanding all the logic of her mother's actions as an empress still could not accept it with her heart. After all, how could her own mother abandon her? And how could her younger sisters replace her? The empress told her daughter that that zone in the east is a place where even capable knights refuse to go. She asked if she knew that there were dangerous monsters waiting for the unwary victim at every step, and how many talented people died there. Kirona claimed that there are rare medicinal herbs that grow only there. And also in the east there live healers, prophets, and eccentric magicians who devoted their entire lives to research. She told her mother that she had nothing to lose anyway. The empress replied that for her sake she had nothing to lose. She could not sacrifice the knights of the imperial family. The woman claimed that once she went there, 4 out of 10 would never return. Then the girl realized what was going on. She smiled back. The mother continued that she did not understand how the princess would be able to send the imperial knights to the east. That there, they will definitely be kidnapped by mercenaries demanding ransom. The girl realized that for her mother, the empress, there were many more important things than love for her daughter. The same applied to herself. She now had something more important than life as an obedient daughter. Kirona recalled that a punitive detachment of prisoners was always sent to the east. She thought that this would be enough for her. She also assured that she was going to take a medicine from the magicians that changes the color of the eyes. The girl was going to hide her belonging to the imperial family in such a way that problems would not arise. The princess asked her mother to just leave her, so that she can take care of herself and find a way to heal or perish there. The empress began to shout at her daughter. Ask what she's talking about anyway. But the girl argued that her mother should no longer be afraid of rumors spreading about her imminent death. The girl asked to be released with a blessing, and wish her luck. The mother looked reproachfully at her firstborn, realizing that the girl had a steely character. The empress had nothing more to say to her daughter, and the girl, realizing this, turned around and left the throne room. She stood under the closed door and took a breath after a difficult conversation. The girl was asked by her sister if it was true that she was leaving for the east. It was one of her younger sisters. Pine was the 4th princess of the Manhwa-Hub Empire. Kirona confirmed, saying that she wanted to go on a trip, and on the way she was going to look into the Tower of Magicians and say hello to her sister's father. But Pine asked her not to change the topic of their conversation and answer honestly. She doubted the veracity of Kirona's words, since she did not take guards with her, but joined the rabble in the punitive detachment. The older sister assured that it was terribly boring when someone constantly follows her, and it will be something like a secret journey. But her sister didn't believe her. She told Kirona that she herself knew, that she was different from their other stupid sisters in her powers of observation and ability to analyze. Therefore, I insisted on her honest answer. The girl was surprised by her sister's insight because she was still just a child, and I didn't know what to answer. Pine asked her sister point blank, "Are you dying?" The girl made another attempt to avoid a direct answer, pretending that she did not understand what she was talking about. The younger one asked if her sister had tetra fever, assuming that she is not going on a trip but in search of Nadalin. Kirona froze in surprise. Nadalin was a flower created by Lady Teresia. Although they said that the Nadalin flower is a kind of monster, yet it was a legendary plant, recognized as sacred throughout the world. Pine insisted that this was true. Her sister made fun of her for locking herself in the library for several days for whatever purpose it turns out. The younger one was surprised that her sister didn't know that her favorite book was the Encyclopedia of Legendary Monsters, and that her sister's notes in the margins and the folded corners of the pages in her favorite book got on her nerves. The younger one was surprised that from some day on her sister stopped showing up at classes for heiresses, and as soon as she caught a cold, the servants immediately created a real commotion. Pine assured that from the outside it looked more than strange, but no one could have thought that Kirona was hiding such a secret. The eldest of the sisters gave up and admitted to her that she was going to the east because she did not want to die. The girl was surprised that a man who did not want to die went with an army of criminals to the east to the lair of monsters. And all this was for the sake of some mystical flower. Kirona reported that it is called a cure for all diseases, that all she had to do was find him and she could fight for her life. The girl doubted that anyone had ever managed to find such a flower, but her sister answered that the ancient records say that it blooms only in the east. The younger one was annoyed that her sister believed in this and relied on records from 500 years ago, that her decision is no different from being inspired by an old fairy tale about a feat against a dragon with a wooden sword. Pine held her temples. She doubted that her sister would be able to find the plant in such a dangerous place, leading a group of imprisoned criminals. Corona reported that they would not be the only ones with her, that upon arrival in the east she is going to involve mercenaries in the operation. Pine urged that her sister should turn to her mother with a request, so that she would send a detachment of elite knights to the east to find a healing flower. She held her hands and looked straight into her eyes. Corona assured that her mother already had a child to replace her. She realized that all the children in the world are innocent, regardless of the place, form, and for what reason they were born. Therefore, she sincerely hoped that all her sisters would be healthy and would never get sick like she did. After all, in the past, she too was such a child for the Empress, on whom they pinned a lot of hopes. Corona said that it was time for her to leave, and turning her back to her sister, she hurried to leave her. Pine shouted after her sister, "Which wishes her luck?" She reminded her of the myth about the dying girl who drew the red lot and became a miracle knight. The girl told her sister that she, like that miracle knight from the myth, would draw the red lot. A horse galloping through a storm is not afraid of the wind. A fish caught in a raging stream is not afraid of the waves. Child who has drawn the red lot, the whole world is striving to meet you. Nothing else can frighten you. It was about Corona. After all, in youth everyone receives mental wounds. Therefore, in this vast empire, the princess suffering from an incurable disease was not the only one who had lost the meaning of love. The guy realized that he wanted to hit the road in search of a way to survive. The year James Eclipse turned 16, Eclipse County was completely destroyed. The letter that he then received stated that the Count, his father, had died, and John and Mark Eclipse, his brothers, went missing. Jaima lay there and thought about the situation. All this happened because of damn love. One of the 7 knights who fought for Teresia, the goddess of creation, was Yuri Eclipse and his descendants, the Eclipse family. The lady was asking the boy why he didn't like Yuri Eclipse. The boy explained that according to the legend about the founding of the country, that Knight of the Flame gave up everything for love, devoting his life to Teresa. He considered that knight wrong and crazy, and he regretted that his pedigree had not gone away, because generations of their kind were crazy about love and destroyed families just like him. This is how Jaime reasoned with his older sister when he was only 12 years old. He assured her that was what people said. He believed that all eclipses pretended to be decent, but had madness running through their veins. And if they go crazy because of something, they can't get out. This was especially true for love. The boy assured his sister that for this reason he would never allow himself to be bewitched by such a stupid feeling. And in truth, there was a good reason why the boy made such a firm decision. The girl was banging on the door. She asked Mother to leave. After all, her son had never seen her face since birth. It was known that Countess Eclipse married for love without any political purpose. This was quite rare among women in the Mihara's empire. And thanks to this, all children had one blood father. But it so happened that this beloved man died of tuberculosis before the birth of his youngest son, Jade. Then, out of grief, the Countess closed the doors and stopped receiving anyone. And this went on for 10 years. But what pulled the Countess out, drowning in emptiness, was love. Thanks to the Countess, who contacted the gambler in such a timely manner, all her wealth of the Eclipse family was exhausted. Her new lover lost significantly. Simultaneously with the loss of her livelihood, she again lost her lover. The boy read a letter from his sister. She was tired of everything and eventually disappeared without a trace, leaving only a goodbye note to her brothers. A woman in a robe with fur spoke to the guys that they owe him 200 million Elysiums and there won't be enough of them even if you sell this castle. He offered them a choice, a mercenary guild or a gladiator gaming house. The boy threw the papers at his feet. He chose the mercenary guild. The reputation of their family, gained by crazy love, was lost because of it. How contradictory this was. Jade remembered his sister's note addressed to him. She advised him never to fall in love in his life, and now he swore this to her in his mind. And now the guy was reading a letter from his older sister. He didn't even think that she, with her poor health, would last so long. And he understood that eventually even the name Eclipse would disappear over time. The guy rubbed his eyes, tired from reading. He said he didn't care about any of this. A year has already passed since the terminally ill princess left home, and a year after the line of the Flame Knight lost its honor. A rough voice commandingly called for Jade Eclipse to get up. A man in a dark cloak said that there was a new assignment. He ordered the guy to open his sleepy eyes, and he was unhappy that he was disturbed so early in the morning. A lady with an eye patch and a scar on her cheek read from a piece of paper. About 17 to 19 years old, about the height of his chest, dark brown hair and gray eyes. She assured him that he didn't need to know anything else. She said that this person should just be kidnapped and brought here to her. The guy scratched his head puzzledly, thinking. Legs in black ankle boots walked along the road. The guy pulled the hood of his cloak over his head. He could not even imagine that he would have to enter this damned forest again. He was ordered to kidnap the girl and bring her to the guild, but do it in such a way that not even a hair falls from her head. He was never able to get an answer as to who he needed to hunt for. The boss retorted that he had never cared about the details of orders before. Why did he suddenly become interested in this now? The lady began to mock the guy. She asked that his health had worsened due to the kidnapping of the baby, but he asked not to talk nonsense. He remembered that Zelda Black had already taken this task with pleasure, and he was surprised that he was entrusted with this. The boss said that Zelda still hasn't shown up. They've been waiting for her for so long. The guy argued that perhaps she had reasons or some insurmountable difficulties that she could not return. Jade didn't like that this was monster territory. Also the Nabimi Forest. I was surprised who dared to go there. I assumed that only a madman could be like that. This place was where the Empire, instead of execution, sent its prisoners under the guise of a punitive detachment. And the guy was surprised that that girl decided to go there. The lady called out to Jade Eclipse, smiling. She assured the guy that since his older brothers had run away, he should at least work hard to repay their family's huge debt. The lady tried to interest the guy by freeing him from paying all interest for a whole year. But his expression did not soften. He just clenched his teeth harder. Branches clung to his clothes. The guy said to himself that he was not some idiot. He was well aware of all the local rumors. He had already heard a lot about the girl. She has brown hair, gray eyes, and a metropolitan accent. He also heard about the punitive detachment that appeared in the East a year ago. The knight who led them was either simply lucky or had outstanding abilities. But he was able to surprise many, because he dealt with everything alone. Although Jade believed that equally in the forest that lucky guy would surely meet his end. After all, there were so many monsters there. The guy was alerted by the sound and looked back over his shoulder. Something hissed and whined nearby. He covered his mouth and nose with his hand to prevent his breathing from giving away. A creature with scales crawled a meter away from him. He realized with horror that it could be a basilisk. That creature paralyzed people with just its gaze. Stops the breathing of living beings with just one breath. And no one could escape from him. This was a monster of the highest rank, even if he didn't have wings. But they said that it was much more difficult to defeat him than a dragon. Jade thought that the basilisk had already noticed him and put his hand on the handle, ready to use it at any moment. He realized that there was no point in running. He considered that he was choosing a better option than being digested in the stomach of that hellish snake. His sword fell to the ground at his feet. Leaning his back against a tree trunk, he pressed the blades of the dagger to his throat so as to end his life with one sharp movement. Already on his neck, a small cut with a sharp point appeared. But someone with incredible force grabbed him by the collar of his cloak and knocked the blade from his hands. The guy was confused. But at that moment, the capsule was already being passed from mouth to mouth. The girl pushed an amber round into his mouth, ending with a short kiss. Jade was surprised, but the girl ordered him to swallow. She hurried him to chew and swallow without any extra thought if he did not want to die. The guy chewed obediently, widening his eyes at the stranger who had come to his aid in such a timely manner. As he took a sip, he introduced himself. He looked at the girl and repeated to himself that under no circumstances should he fall in love with her. The girl asked her to untie her. I asked where they were going. The time was already approaching sunset. The guy walked ahead and led the girl tied by the hands behind him. She demanded an answer about him. She called him ungrateful that he had never even heard of a sense of duty. She regretted that she did not let the basilisk eat him there by that tree. She reproached him that he didn't even realize how valuable the medicine she gave him was. The girl assured that there was nothing strange about him, that it only helped to hide from monsters. The girl couldn't find the words to say to this rude man, and the guy pulled her by the rope to continue along the path. She demanded that the guy talk to her. I was surprised that he didn't know the language. He only looked at her angrily in response. Kirona sat down on the ground. She said that she could no longer walk with her hands tied because it was very difficult to move. She assured that she would not run away. That's why I asked her to just untie her. She claimed that she was already very weak. The guy was thinking. He replied that weak people do not meddle with monsters in the forest. I was surprised that she didn't understand how unconvincing her words sounded. The girl was surprised that he knew the language. She asked how he could ignore her, realizing that they were addressing him. Jade retorted that he never told her that he didn't know the language. I thought it was simply too noisy. And he believed that his answer would only complicate things even more. The guy put the tip of a dagger to her throat. He said that when he left her alone, there would still be no end to her chatter. Corona brazenly answered that it means putting a knife to the neck of a person who saved his life. This is an Eastern tradition. She smiled boldly, looking into his eyes. A few days ago, there was a conversation in a bar. The girl said that she knew a little about her interlocutor, that mercenary from the West named Maranda. The blonde with a scar on her face, without answering the question, asked the stranger who she was. She replied that it didn't matter. She asked me to be her guide. She said that she was going to go to Nabimi Forest. She handed the mercenary a bag with an advance payment in her hand. The mercenary choked. Having said that, of all places, this is the one where no one will go. And she too, even at the edge of the forest. The girl said that she would pay 5 million Elysian right now as a down payment, and another 5 million upon returning from the forest. The mercenary shuddered. Hearing the cost of the services, she slammed her fist on the table with a laugh. I asked when to leave. She insisted that she had always wanted to visit that forest at least once. She asked why the girl needed this. After all, even the Empress lost interest in Nabimi Forest. Or rather, the head of the empire abandoned the entire eastern region. Corona assured with a serious look that the Empress had not done anything like that. After all, the people of the empire also live here. Marin said that if her interlocutor had already spent more than a year in the East, I probably saw everything with my own eyes. Therefore, she considered this place to be a knight's grave and the land of abandoned people. Corona slammed her fist on the table. She agreed that Marin's words were right. During this difficult year living in the East, she understood only two things: what poor slums look like and what territory abandoned by the Empire means. After all, the East is mired in poverty. The black earth stretches all around, having absorbed the poison of monsters. The girl was determined. Marin insisted that she was only interested out of curiosity. She claimed that it was surprising, despite all the danger, that the girl still wanted to go to the Nabimi Forest. Corona said she was looking for one thing, but the mercenary was surprised what could be more important than life itself. The princess thought that more than a year had passed since her arrival in the East, but she wasn't like a flower. She couldn't even find any clues about it. I thought I needed to explore this place, even if I had to go there in person. But just as Marin had warned, the forest of Nabim was teeming with danger and hardly comparable to other areas of the East. Over the past days, the girl met many monsters. She often witnessed human deaths. The princess made every effort to survive. But who would have thought that in the end she would be kidnapped by some stranger, instead of attacked by a monster? She was surprised at the Eastern tradition of expressing gratitude in this way. The guy said that he would answer her only once, that he is a mercenary and needs money, and his rich client just wants to get her. The guy assured that if she was obedient, she would remain safe and sound. After all, the reward for a living person is greater than for a corpse, but he assured that he would kill her if she continued to make noise and get on his nerves. James believed that it would have been easier to kill the girl, and since the sun had already set, he ordered a halt until dawn. The meat was fried on the fire. Corona was sitting under a tree, tied hand and foot. She wondered where Marin might have gone. She consoled herself that she couldn't grab the basilisk. The girl decided to obey and, with the help of this mercenary, get out of the forest. She called the guy, "Hey," because she didn't know his name. She suggested introducing themselves to each other. After all, they won't hick each other all the time. She said that given that they were in the Nabimi Forest, she was unlikely to be able to escape. The girl assured that until they left the forest, they would have to stick together one way or another. The guy had the feeling that he was the only one caught here. Corona demanded the kidnapper give her an answer, and he regretted that he got such a noisy girl to order. The guy noticed to himself that she knew too much to be a simple scion of an ordinary family. Just recently, she scolded him using 5 different languages, and her rude behavior was too natural. Besides, he didn't have time to think it through. The girl sat in front of him, irritated, and flew towards him. She again put something round in his mouth again with a kiss. The guy cursed to himself. He asked her what kind of candy she fed him. The magician gave them a handful to the girl. He asked her not to get too close to the monsters, and he reminded her that she was not an invincible warrior. The magician assured that although the medicine temporarily hides the smell and appearance of a person, the keen sense of monsters cannot be deceived by anything. The girl said that these were very valuable capsules. They help hide from monsters. The guy was interested in who gave them to her. She replied that she knew William Bryce. The guy was surprised that the girl received a favor from the owner of the magic tower himself. He asked her if she herself was a magician. At the same time, he suddenly jumped up and accidentally pulled the rope. She briefly denied. The guy demanded that she prove it. The girl asked how he should do it. She claimed that her sister's father, like her sister herself, were magicians, but she herself was not one of those. The guy realized for himself that if she is connected with William Bryce, then she probably belongs to the aristocracy. Jade held his head, fearing that he might be executed for kidnapping an important high-ranking person. He was already beginning to regret that he could not kill himself in front of the basilisk. The girl was interested in how much debt he had. He didn't understand her question. She was surprised that things were so bad that he decided to go to Nabimi Forest. After all, she understood that there were few reasons why a nobleman would become a mercenary. The guy was surprised by her insight. Kirona assured that his noble origin was too obvious. After all, it is not easy to get rid of habits laid down in deep childhood. The girl began to remember who went broke in recent years. The guy warned her to shut her mouth if she didn't want to die right now. The girl asked defiantly if he was going to get rid of her, and she answered for him that the price of remuneration did not allow him to do this. The guy doubted that if he let her go, she would pay off his debt, claiming that there is no person in the Mihada's empire capable of contributing 200 million Elysian. The girl asked for the amount and claimed that she could do it. She asked if he would come over to her side if she helped him pay off his debt. The guy asked her again. The girl claimed that she was ready to pay the entire amount for him, and she asked her to help. She doubted that he would be able to let her go, and she believed that she still had unfinished business in the East. She said there was something she needed to find, and nothing will stop her even if she has to dig up the entire forest. The guy openly laughed at the girl. He asked the girl about the degree of her madness. They continued walking along the path. The sun's rays shone through the foliage. Jade was alarmed by the unusual silence. But then I thought that there was nothing wrong with a peaceful environment. The girl noticed his wary appearance, and she said that the atmosphere was too strange. The guy asked her not to say anything stupid. The girl announced that she would now voice something smart, which might have become quiet due to the presence of the basilisk they had recently encountered. After all, with the awakening of a strong monster, the rest of the little things hide in the corners, Jade asked. Since she knows so much, she should know why she should keep her mouth shut. That he wouldn't have figured it out without it. The girl joked that she was always pleased to share good news. The guy argued that if she had any common sense, she would not call this good news. After all, when a large monster wakes up, the axes of time and space are distorted, and they themselves could be pulled into an unknown dimension, or thrown out in another period of time. The guy asked his companion if she would like to go on a similar trip with him. Kirona gave him an indignant look. She answered that she didn't want to at all. She suggested that they go quickly. She asked how much longer was left until the edge of the forest. Jade assured that it was a 2-hour walk. Therefore, he suggested that she keep quiet and pray to Teresia that good luck would accompany them. The girl turned to the guy indignantly, accusing him to his face that there was no righteousness left in him. Jade asked with a grin what she expected from a mercenary from the East. He clarified what this goddess had done for him in life. Kirona wondered why he had such an attitude towards religion. She reminded me that he was not just anyone, but a native of the Eclipse family. The guy stood in front of her, a little ashamed. The girl was confident that she was right. She said that he was the Countess's son, that he is a descendant of Yuri Eclipse, the Knight of Flame. That of all the 7 that are described in Teresia's collection, he is the most revered in all of Mihada's. That the story of Eclipse makes a strong impression. The girl began to quote, "Night of love, self-sacrifice, flame." The guy asked her to stop and close her mouth. But she continued, "A night of burning passion and madness." The guy clenched his fists and gritted his teeth tightly. He reached his hand towards the hilt of the sword at his belt. I thought that this time he would definitely silence her. But then the sound of a blow was heard. The girl swore. The guy was alarmed about what happened to her. She held her forehead and groaned. Kirona turned over her shoulder to her surprised companion and assured him that there was something ahead. The guy replied that there was nothing there, and he didn't believe her nonsense, but he himself felt something at hand, something that would not let him through further. Jade tested the strength of this screen with his fist, but his hand bounced back. The girl worriedly asked what happened and what was going on. The guy said that she herself saw everything, that they were locked. He rubbed his forehead, trying to come up with the best way out of this situation. Kirona claimed that the awakening of the basilisk nevertheless distorted space, or the monster could have set up a giant trap to catch them. The girl asked what they should do now. Jade thought it was worth returning, but she was against being back in the thick of the forest. The guy told her to move if she wanted to stay alive. The mercenary assured that if they went to the opposite edge of the forest, then perhaps there they could find a way out of it. Kirona doubted. What if they failed to find a way out there too? But then raindrops began to fall, and soon it turned into a downpour. Jade pulled the girl's hand. She resisted, cursing. He put her under a tree. Kirona continued to swear, asking him indignantly what he was doing such a thing. Jade told her that the rain is poisonous. The girl involuntarily shuddered. He said it was amazing bad luck. He swore it was not an act of chivalry or self-sacrifice that coursed through his veins. The guy said that for a mercenary, compliance with the terms of the contract is more important than life, and that all because the client said to bring the girl completely safe, so that a hair wouldn't fall off her head. He assured himself that he himself had no strong thirst for existence, that lately life has been tiring and annoying him, and if there is a way to die peacefully, then he will gladly accept it. He covered the girl with his cloak. She called him Eclipse. He mentally asked her not to address him by that damn last name, that she was just a means to pay off his debt. But he admitted to himself that when he heard the desperate call of a girl, he felt like he was doing all these stupid things to protect her. Like a knight who betrayed his master for the sake of the chosen one of his heart. He saved the goddess by blocking the sun with his back, but received nothing in return. Like stupid Yuri Eclipse, who gave his life for love. But not being able to offer anything else, he promised himself not to repeat the same fate of his ancestor. The guy fell flat on the ground. Kirona called him, but he did not respond. He seemed to be unconscious. The princess looked around in search of the optimal solution. She clenched her hand into a fist. It was sad to come all this way only to die from the rain. The guy had also given her his cape, and now he was lying motionless on the path under a tree. The girl couldn't understand. The guy was amazing or just stupid. She looked at him, appraising him. And by the way, I decided that up close he looked even younger. She brushed his brown hair from his face with her hand. Now she could tell his name. It was the youngest son of the bankrupt House of Eclipse who had to become a mercenary. Jade Eclipse. In class, the princess wondered, why memorize the names of the main aristocrats of the empire? And now it turns out that it was useful to her. She carefully touched the skin on the guy's face. She told the motionless guy that she liked him anyway. I tried to turn him over on his back. The girl noticed that of all the mercenaries she had met, he turned out to be the most loyal. But she realized that this devotion was, of course, to money, and not to herself. And she decided that she would undertake to save Jade. It seemed to her that he would be an excellent subordinate. The clouds were moving in again, threatening rain. The princess rolled the guy onto the cloak and dragged him along the path. He seemed very heavy to her. Kirona said that the kidnapper was lucky. After all, where else in the empire would he find an employer like her? She saw a pillar in the distance. I was surprised that it could be a chimney. This means there could be a house and living people there who would come to their aid. When the girl dragged the guy along the road, she told him that when he was silent, he was even cuter. She promised that when they returned to the capital, she would appoint him as her guard. Kirona told the unconscious guy that he should consider it an honor. After all, even if you combine the past and the future, he was the only patient whom the first princess of Mahadas personally endured. The light was on in the house, and a column of smoke was pouring out of the chimney. The hostess groaned and fussed. She was surprised that such important guests came to such a modest place. The girl was grateful that their uninvited guests were considered important. The fire burned brightly in the fireplace, crackling. The hostess claimed that the guests were in fact important. The old lady said that fortunately this guy is quite young. and the fact that they quickly got to her to eliminate the poison contributed to the fact that what happened would not affect his health in any way. The girl was surprised that the mistress of the house was so knowledgeable about wounds, to which she replied that although she was already an old woman, she was a magician, and in my youth I once worked as a healer. Looking at the guy, she claimed that he looked like a mercenary, but she couldn't understand how something like this could happen to him. He coughed in his sleep. The girl began to talk about the basilisk, that he seemed to have set a trap blocking their path from the forest, and then they were caught in the poisonous rain. But the girl did not expect the guy to be so badly injured. The old woman asked the girl if she herself was okay. She replied that she was not hurt at all, and the guy is like that because he protected her from that rain with his raincoat under the tree. Corona reproached herself that the guy's wounds were more serious than she had imagined, and I felt guilty. And now she didn't know how to pay him back. But the magician assured that there was no person who would take payment after fulfilling his duty, that he wouldn't dare just stand by. Meanwhile, she bandaged the guy's wounds on his shoulder. She assured that the guy had to take care of her like the apple of his eye and stay close to the princess. The old woman looked back at the girl and smiled slyly at her. The girl pretended that she did not understand what she was talking about, but the mistress of the house said that it was worth dropping the conventions, and she asked to call her simply Sonia. Corona was amazed that her interlocutor found out. She pulled back. After all, she definitely hid her eye color with magic. I thought that the effectiveness might decrease over time. The old lady asked who gave her such an inept potion, and she advised the girl to fire the magician who did such a hack job. She said that she simply could not help but recognize the color of Mrs. Theresia's eyes, that in this world, only members of the imperial family can have amber-colored eyes. In the sky, light clouds covered the pale moon. Jade woke up and jumped up sharply, looking around cautiously. The fire crackled hospitably in the fireplace. He couldn't understand what had happened, but he remembered very well that he was caught in the poisonous rain. Then I wondered where that girl had gone. He was still bothered by his cough. He scratched his head in thought, suspecting that his companions simply took advantage of the moment and ran away. The guy already regretted that he had put into her ears the idea of an unsafe stay in the local forest. And now, walking through the forest, she could definitely die. He clenched his teeth tightly in frustration, but then the tip of a blade touched his chest. The girl held the metal at his neck and fixed his shoulder. She asked him how he slept. The girl asked what he should be called. Hey, Kidnapper, or Jade Eclipse. The guy thought that this weasel had somehow managed to find out his name. The mercenary turned away from her. He said that he should use his name instead of using offensive nicknames. The princess assured that if he did not want to die, then it was better for him to follow her. They left the house and walked along the path. The guy asked where they were and where they were going now. Corona said that this was the house of the magician who saved him. The girl turned over her shoulder, and smiling cheerfully said that she was taking him for a swim. Soon the thickets parted in front of them, revealing the mirror-like surface of the water. The stars reflected in the water with thousands of tiny lights. It was simply a mesmerizing sight, almost magical. The princess claimed that, according to the magician, this mineral spring helps wounds heal faster. Jade was already standing with his torso bare, covering himself with a cloth. He was surprised that the girl believed the first person she met. He accused her of not thinking about the dangers at all. The girl turned around and said over her shoulder that she had nothing to lose, and she also had no time left. She said that that's why she didn't run away, but decided to bring him here to help and heal his wounds. Corona asked him to listen to her carefully, that they alarmed the basilisk, and without a healthy body it is useless to run and hide, or to fight and defend. She said that it was time for the guy to close his mouth and silently quickly climb into the water of the source. But the mercenary continued to doubt. He wasn't sure if there was anything dangerous there. The girl decisively and unexpectedly kicked the guy off his feet into the water. It grouped itself and gurgled not far from the shore. Jade emerged from the water and began swearing at the girl, but I was very surprised to see how his wounds behaved. After a pause, the guy surprisingly said that his wounds were really healing. His savior from the shore proudly answered that this was all quite expected. She argued that if there is a disease, there must be a cure. The guy turned his head sharply to her and asked what she was planning to do. He turned away from the girl and heard a gurgling sound, and a minute later a girl stood in front of him, also in the water. I asked if he was really going to enjoy everything alone. Kirona claimed that she pushed him into the water to check if everything was okay. Jade was angry at her rude, selfish act, but the girl claimed that after his ropes and walking, her whole body hurt. The mercenary thought about it. After all, it looked like the girl was definitely from a high-ranking aristocracy. After all, how could one behave like that? He decided that he needed to get out of the water and think about what to do with this lady. But she took him by the hand. She said they needed to talk. The girl noticed many scars on her back. She asked how many years he had been working as a mercenary. The guy answered that it was about 5. She asked how old he was now. Jade, standing with his back to her, answered that he was 17. He couldn't understand what kind of conversation she was having with him in her underwear. Kirona told the guy that he was the same age as her. She asked who ordered her kidnapping and what reward was promised. Jade replied that she had no use for this information, and he wondered why he answered her questions so obediently. Kirona remembered that he had previously reported that he owed 200 million, and she was ready to hire him and pay the full amount. But the guy assured that if she was going to talk nonsense, then let her bring worthy arguments in her favor, that if he goes over to her, he must know what the task assigned to him is. Kirona said that she couldn't tell him that yet. The mercenary said that she was searching but did not understand what exactly. Jade said their conversation was over, that if she was going to hire him, then she should provide the necessary information. He said that he did not believe her nonsense, that she agreed to pay off his huge debt. The princess said that she was looking for the Nadalin flower. The guy insisted that he had no business with crazy people. I was surprised that she went for the flower from the legends. The girl asked in rage who said that that flower did not really exist. Why is everyone so skeptical? Jade admitted that she could carry out the Empress's orders, but he warned that it was a one-way ticket, that they wanted to remove her from politics or simply kill her. But the girl assured him that everything was completely different. Then the guy admitted that she needed the flower personally. She confirmed. Then he asked the reason, assuming that someone was sick. She confirmed that she was sick. The guy said that if she has enough money to pay off his debt, it would be better if she turned to a doctor or a soothsayer. He assured that throughout the continent there are many capable. The girl interrupted him, claiming that it was the flower that was needed, and if he was going to tell her that this was impossible, then let him not waste words in vain. No matter what anyone told her, she was determined. The guy asked her if she forgot that she had been kidnapped by him, but she replied that sooner or later he would still swear allegiance to her. She rubbed her eyes, and she said that she would definitely achieve this. Jade gave up. I told the girl that she'd stop crying already. He told her that it was time for them to go ashore. He promised to consider her proposal there already. The girl shouted that no one was crying here, but the guy suddenly noticed that her eyes had changed color. He cursed in surprise, and he started touching her face. He asked where she got the feature that only one clan possesses in the vast lands of the empire. It was a sign of belonging to the imperial family, that it is immediately lost among the relatives of the lateral branches. The guy knew that the girl had eyes of a noble color, characteristic only of Teresia's direct descendants. It turned out that Jade Eclipse, a mercenary with 5 years of experience, completed an incredible task. In the entire history of Mihadas, no one has ever dared to do this. They stood in the water and he stroked the girl's cheek, and she looked trustingly into his eyes. After a pause of thought, he said that he had kidnapped a princess to order. The girl swore. She covered her face and said that she had forgotten about the peculiarities of the water of this lake, which dispels magic. She decided to introduce herself to the guy. She said that her real name is Kirona, and she changed her eye color by drinking a magic potion, that when she wipes away the waters, they will turn gray again. Jade stood rooted to the spot with his mouth open in surprise. She really turned out to be a princess. He remembered how on her birthday, sky lanterns flew throughout the empire, and then she herself was called the main treasure. She was the Empress's favorite daughter and first princess. The girl asked the guy if he regretted his arrogant behavior. I doubted that he was going to suddenly show great respect and start addressing her as you. Jade glanced at her with his blue eyes, and she asked him to behave as before, so that he under no circumstances uses the address princess to her. The girl said that this was her order, so that he will continue to ignore formalities. But she only asked not, "Hey you," considering this too rude. And the guy froze in place. He angrily asked what her name would be in this case, claiming that even if he is a mercenary, he has nothing left to lose. I just didn't know how to behave like that with the princess. And the fire crackled in the fireplace, warming the magician's small home. The girl was sleeping soundly right on the floor, covered with a blanket. Jade sat above her, deep in thought. He could not understand why such a noble person was here completely alone. But then they shoved him in the back with force. The old lady shouted at him that he was an ignorant mercenary. She sternly asked what had to be done to ruin the princess's mood. Jade was surprised that she knew everything. She was indignant at his slowness, especially when you see such eyes. The guy assured that when he kidnapped her, her eyes were definitely gray. The magician assured that a guy who was working on developing just muscles was of little use. That only uneducated barbarian mercenaries could not recognize such a significant person. The woman asked, calling him a brat, what he was going to do now, reminding me that a basilisk is darting around the forest. She tapped his head, checking to see if it was empty. Jade covered his face with his hands. He asked himself out loud, wondering if the empire had really collapsed or if he was just going crazy, that this simply couldn't really happen. After all, he couldn't understand why a member of the imperial family would enter a dangerous forest in search of some kind of flower. The woman looked at the guy carefully, assessing his potential. She said, looking out the window, that everything has a meaning, and everything is the will of Mrs. Teresia. The mercenary asked the old woman if she was a fortune teller. She answered that she knew. She knew that an important guest with amber eyes was about to enter the forest. The guy was surprised that a magician could believe in a goddess. In his opinion, this was the same as a clergyman talking nonsense about magic and sorcery. Myths and legends about Teresia have been passed down from generation to generation since time immemorial. They said that magicians are creatures that were born from the shadow of the goddess. The magicians were the ones who took the opposite side. They attacked Teresia, who was expecting the birth of a child. And so Zeber was born, the imperfect sun god. And this marked the beginning of the tragedy that destroyed the heavenly lands. In the Empire, magicians are persecuted. Because of this, many of them settled in the eastern wastelands. The woman claimed that Lady Teresa gives love to all beings equally, and magicians are not her enemies. She was telling Jade Eclipse to go to bed, assuring that in order to go a long way with the princess, he will need to have a strong and resilient body. The guy asked his name. She also saw it in a dream. The old woman vaguely answered that she didn't even know, that once she heard the name Eclipse, it was already difficult to forget it. The guy told the woman to forget, that if he can't kill the princess, then he can easily do it. And the magician wondered where such hooligans come from. Jade replied that he was not going to go into details, and I didn't understand why it mattered to anyone why the princess should be here. The guy began to carefully cover the girl with his cloak. He rubbed his forehead in thought. He said that first he was going to take her out of the forest completely safe. The old woman reported that such actions are usually called defense. She called him the Knight of the Flame, but he shouted at Grandma to shut up. Jade claimed that he was not a knight protecting the princess, but a mercenary, that he is only loyal to money, and its cost is 200 million Elysium. He asked the woman if the Nadalin flower really existed. She replied that all the creations of Mrs. Teresa exist. The only point is that they are very rare and valuable. The guy just bombarded the magician with questions. Where? Who saw it? Did she see it herself? But she remained silent, phlegmatically reading the book. He reproached that she herself could not answer the question. Jade thought the princess was doing something really stupid, and he couldn't even imagine who was sick, since such an important person in the Empire went on a search. The guy observing the girl's energy admitted that it was definitely not she herself who was sick, but then he said that he didn't care. After all, he wasn't even a knight. The old woman smiled quietly to herself. She watched the sleeping princess. Then I saw how the guy fussed around the girl and assured himself that this was only a mercantile interest. It turned out that the great flame knight Eclipse met Teresia again. Heat was coming out of the chimney. The princess gasped and woke up and sat up. Jade was sleeping on the floor next to her. She only now realized that it was just a dream. The old woman asked what alarmed the girl so much, suggesting that she had a nightmare. She poured water into a glass. Kirona was surprised that Sonia was not sleeping, but she answered that magicians do not need long sleep. She was carrying a glass of water to the princess. The girl thanked her for the drink, and the magician asked her why she came to the forest. She asked not to tell her about the Nadalin flower. She already knew about it. The old woman was sure that there was a deeper reason, and bowing, she assured that she might be able to help her with this. Claiming to be a 130-year-old mage, Sonia assured that even a fool who has lived for more than a century acquires wisdom. And Corona bowed her head in front of the old woman and spoke that she came to this forest in search of life, since she herself was terminally ill. The old woman asked the girl if she had seen at least one wildflower during all the time she spent in the forest. She thought about it and answered negatively. She clarified that she had not met a single one. Sonia assured that this was natural, which she couldn't, because here the plants cannot even form buds properly. The princess shuddered. She was surprised by the statement that not even the flower from the legend could grow in this place. The woman reminded him that he was just a plant anyway, and in the East any flowers have long ceased to grow. Kirona was amazed by this fact. She asked Sonia, does she believe that Nadalin exists? She admitted that people think she is crazy, and she could only rely on him. However, everyone insists that the flower does not exist. The old woman, after a pause, answered the princess that such a flower actually exists, and she saw him personally. It was 100 years ago, here in the East. The girl listened with her mouth open in surprise. She said that a century ago a huge monster awakened in the Nabimi forest. It was comparable in power to a basilisk. Then Sonia's sisters and many friends died defending these lands. But in the end, the people won. The monster fell, and in that very place, the Nadalin flower bloomed. The princess tried to understand what she heard. The magician explained to her that if the eastern lands polluted by the basilisk are cleansed, the flower will definitely bloom again. The girl perked up. She began to ask Sonia who took possession of the last Nadalin flower. The magician bowed low to the princess. I asked her to forgive me, but she couldn't tell her that. After all, she, like a prophet, swore an oath with 2 eyes that she would not reveal this secret to anyone. The princess did not insist. She was now glad that if the flower really existed. It turned out that it was not in vain that she had gone so far. And with the death of the basilisk, she has hope again. Sonia said that's all true, but she warned the girl that it is not so easy to go against her fate. Kirona was sure that fate was the lot of living and healthy people, and she has nothing left to lose. She lowered her eyes sadly. And in this case, she is the person who is capable of anything. The magician, seeing her determination, assured the girl that she would definitely find her way. The girl asked her why she decided to help her. The old lady asked if she thought that the magicians might be hostile to the imperial family. The girl claimed that there had always been quite tense relations between them and her family. But we shouldn't forget about Princess Pine. After all, everyone knew that her father was the owner of the Tower of Magicians, and some wizards in the East already consider her their lord. Kirona insisted that her sister Pine also knew that she was born due to the fact that her mother and the owner of the tower drank too much, and their emotions ran high. And therefore this cannot be considered an alliance. Sonia took the girl's hand. She assured her that be that as it may, those who devote their lives to her will appear. She assured that it could also be a magician, who was previously considered an enemy of her family, or a mercenary who brazenly rejects his destiny and something more. Corona at that moment assured herself that this was just another vague prophecy, that it doesn't give her confidence that she will survive. But of all the things she had heard lately, the words of the sorceress were the greatest comfort she could have received. The old woman held the princess by both hands and looked soulfully into her eyes. These words gave the girl hope. She thanked Sonia for her frankness and support, and she assured that she would definitely cope. Jade and the princess left the magician's house. The guy began to work magic on her hands with the rope. The girl asked what he was doing. She was surprised that he was going to tie her up again. The guy scratched his head, asking why he should tie up the princess. After all, he had already suggested looking for a way out and returning. And she should sit here. But the girl continued to be stubborn, so for her safety he suggested that she grab the rope and follow him. But Corona assured that she was stubborn for a reason. After all, she could not know what could happen. What if he leaves her and runs away, or something bad might suddenly happen to him? The girl admitted that she had no idea how to get out of the forest. Jade said with a serious face that she didn't seem to understand something. The guy assured her that he could not leave her. He was sure that if he did this and left, he would simply die. And unlike some, no one will look for him. He thought that if he went to look for a way out alone, the princess would definitely follow him. It's better for them to stick together. The guy warned the princess to follow him and not get distracted. He asked if she understood his conditions and instructions. Corona nodded curtly. The girl could not understand why he addressed her as you. She insisted that she couldn't get used to it and was disgusted. But the guy assured that there was no other way to treat the princess, and that she should get used to it. Jade denied that this forest was an outlandish entertainment for members of the imperial family to go here alone. That she's just crazy. The girl asked not to insult her family. The guy scoffed that her family was working hard to turn the empire into the most beautiful of places. The guy gave up arguing with her and agreed that it was none of his business. He began to carefully tie the girl's shoelaces. Corona thought that although her companion was not pious, he really treated her like an important person. After all, before he only yelled and insulted her. And now his behavior has completely changed. The girl touched his hair on his head. The guy was surprised and froze from the unexpected touch, and she began to stroke his head, looking straight into his eyes. The guy chuckled and continued fiddling with her laces, and the girl was surprised that he sat calmly, even when he was treated like a dog. And knowing his bad character, it turned out that he really believed that she was a princess. Jade insisted that even if it was meaningless, he still couldn't help but believe. And besides, for all high-ranking persons, all people who swing a sword are dogs, and therefore it cannot be otherwise with him. The princess asked if he always had such a wild way of speaking, and he recalled that someone had recently said that it was impossible to hide the upbringing and habits of an aristocrat, and the girl was angry that he always had to have the last word. They found no way out in the east. In the west, failure awaited them again. They sat under a tree and wondered what to do next. Corona was afraid that even in the north there would be no way out. The guy was in no hurry to answer. He suggested hiding well and waiting until the forest opens, or kill the snake itself. This made the girl laugh. Jade turned his back to her and got down on one knee. She asked what he was going to do, and he ordered her to climb onto his back. The princess was surprised that he decided to rush around with her like that. She assured that she could walk well, and she asked who he thought she was. But Jade told her that that's not the point. He asked how much time had passed and how she arrived in the east. The girl replied that she had been here for more than a year. The guy assured her that the path to the north was too dangerous, and she needs to save her strength if she doesn't want to get sick and die exhausted right in the forest. Corona asked how he did it then and took his hand. The mercenary assured that in 5 years he had not contracted the local infection, and the girl already grabbed him by the shoulders and he grabbed her knees. Corona was surprised that he had been in this place for so long that he could already be considered a real resident of the East. The guy confirmed that 5 years had already passed since his family went bankrupt. The girl apologized for reminding him of this. Jade asked why she was so persistent and desperate in her search. He assumed that this was some kind of test, to enter the Nabimi forest to become an empress. And the sun was setting behind the mountain peaks. The girl asked if he really never wanted anything. He answered negatively. She assumed he might have wanted money, but Jade assured that paying off the debt cannot be the goal of his whole life. It simply does not allow him to die. The interlocutor summed up that he wants to find freedom. She asked what he would do then. The guy said that he also had nowhere to return, so he admitted that he had no plans, and then he admitted that he didn't really want to live. But if you are dying, you would like to do it calmly. The girl shuddered and became sad. Corona said that she and him are different, that she has a deep desire, that being a member of the imperial family, she doesn't have everything in the world. The mercenary remembered Sonia's words. She assured that the flower would bloom if the earth was cleansed, and if the princess wanted to find him, he advised sending knights here, and she had no reason to come here at all. The girl was sure that no one would come to such a place for the sake of another person, and she won't search as desperately as she does. Jade was surprised that the first princess didn't get enough attention. Corona assured that it was not true when he said that love moves mountains. He asked how about her mother, the empress. The girl remembered her mother's words that she did not understand what her daughter hoped for. That being kind to your child doesn't really mean anything either. The guy supported her, and their opinions agreed for the first time, which greatly surprised the girl. The guy continued to express his position. Even if it was true, coming here alone wasn't the smartest thing to do. The girl assured that everything was fine, that she hid her identity. Jade was surprised that his companion actually had both a naive and eccentric way of thinking. The girl asked him not to behave arrogantly, But then they saw a terrifying sight before them. Two lifeless bodies hung on a tall tree, wrapped in sticky and strong cobwebs. Jade asked if the princess knew them. She replied that she was not particularly familiar, that she hired one of them, but because of the basilisk, she abandoned her and ran away. The guy insisted that he knew both of them, that he and Marin were in the same guild, and the second is Zelda Black, that she went missing after receiving the assignment. He believed that these networks were the work of a basilisk, and he assumed that these people saw his eyes. I believed that the monster deliberately hung their bodies on display. The mercenary checked with the princess. Is there anyone who knows that she went into the forest? What if they die here, that it will no longer be possible to contact them? The girl was determined. She assured that there was nothing to think about such a thing. She stood up and had her back to the guy. Then she turned to face Jade. I looked into his eyes. The princess called on him to help her kill the snake. The mercenary jumped up from such a call. He asked if they were joking with him. He assured that they would rather die here first, trying to kill a monster of the highest level. The princess confidently answered that she was not joking at all. The guy was completely confused. He couldn't believe that she and he were going to defeat such a monster together. Jade insisted that the basilisk was a monster with a really high level of intelligence, that compared to other creatures, he has enormous pride. After all, now he didn't eat these two but hung them out in public just to scare them. But he tried to understand why here. The girl came to the conclusion that the monster had thus designated the forbidden territory, and if they continue to move in this direction, they may have problems. The guy asked her to continue her thought to the end and clarify. The princess concluded that the exit was located on this side, that there was definitely a place that the basilisk had not yet been able to cover. Jade asked if all members of the imperial family were so brave. The girl asked if he studied theology. The guy scratched his head. He answered that there was a little of this in childhood. A horse galloping through a storm is not afraid of the wind. A fish caught in a raging stream is not afraid of the waves, the princess quoted. The guy asked what it was. In other words, if they were already where the hell, there was nothing more to lose. He sat down and rested his head on his hand, thinking. He said it was more like a tease. The girl stroked his head and replied that she thought so too, and yet these words meant that there was no need to be afraid. She remembered from the conversation and the demon of illness, and he answered her that there was no need to be afraid of anything. Kirona claimed that these were her favorite words, that she always pronounces them for her own peace of mind. She asked the guy, does he have a phrase that consoles him? He quoted, "When a guest knocks on a forbidden door, do not open it, but run." The girl was surprised. She asked if this belonged to her native collected works, and what does it mean? Jade claimed that this was his family's motto. It should be understood that if you are passionate about something, you will go crazy. So don't do business and don't gamble and don't fall in love. The princess smiled. She claimed that it was so similar to Eclipse and she liked it. She asked what if he knew these two, the way he evaluates their fighting skills. The guy said that if they were still alive, then their skills must be pretty good. The girl decided to take them with her as soon as she got out of here. The guy began to mutter that she had taken up her task again. Jade took a step. The girl asked where he was going. He shuddered. He answered that he would be on duty, and she should go to bed. The princess argued that he could stand guard next to her. After all, it was possible to freeze. He answered sharply that he was not her lover, that in this case he can make a fire. Kirona was against it. After all, a snake can find them by the smoke. She didn't remember when she suggested that he do something indecent with her, and sleeping together doesn't make them lovers. She suggested doing this because it was simply cold, and she thought that he was not her type. Then she pouted her lips and said, all trembling, what if he doesn't want to? Then she will just take it and die from the cold. The full moon has already risen in the sky. The guy thought that it was an experience with bathing, and now the princess invites him to sleep together, and generally perceives it as a heater. Jade turned away from the girl and began to insist that it was the princess next to him, and she snuggled up to his side and was already falling asleep. The guy thought that if the princess suffered, then not only his but also the lives of his brothers would come to an end. He turned to the sleeping girl. I thought it was just crazy, that even if they manage not to die and somehow get out of the forest, he will never become her knight. Jade believed that he was better suited to deal with monsters alone. The girl muttered why in her sleep. She asked why only this was happening to her. The guy stood next to the girl. Na said that she did not want to die, and she began to whimper through her sleep. The guy asked why she went into the dangerous forest. Jade saw a tear on her eyelashes and began to wipe it away. He admitted that he was wrong, and he promised her not to stutter about death anymore. So I asked her to stop crying. He claimed that he was ready to collapse from fatigue, but when she cried, he just went crazy. It's a clear morning. The princess woke up. She claimed that she had an idea. The girl held a bottle in her hand and said that it was water from the Lake of Healing. And since she can dispel magic, it might have an effect if you spray it on those two. Her face simply shone with joy. Jade doubted that if he spoke out against it, she would listen to him. The princess claimed that she needed to hear his opinion. After all, she is a merciful ruler, and if she does not listen to the people, she is a tyrant. The guy claimed that the basilisk was already furious, and she was going to take this creature's snack and get away from here. The girl said that nothing could be done. I believe that 3 are better than 2 and 4 are better than 3. The guy was afraid that this was the path to a speedy death. Corona believed that all life was a game. Moreover, it was in the Nabimi forest where every second you were on the verge of death. Jade thought about it. He asked how he could overcome the princess's stubbornness, but he was already holding in his hands a bottle of water from a healing spring. The girl was glad that she had convinced him. The mercenary began to splash water from the container onto the web near the bodies. The web began to melt and release the captives. The girl was glad that her idea worked, and the bodies of the female mercenaries were already falling to the ground from the tree. The blonde began to open her eyes. The girl crouched over Miranda. She asked if she had fully come to her senses. The mercenary held her head and moaned in pain. But when she saw the guy, she was surprised and sat up abruptly, calling him by his last name. She called him a brat and accused him of kidnapping her. The mercenary began to tug at his cloak, but he replied that hardly anyone paid for it. The princess stood in front of the mercenary and asked if she recognized her, but Marin asked who she was. Corona recalled that she was her client, whom she cheated by taking 5 million Elysium as a down payment. Jade was surprised by the amount of advance payment for the mercenary's services. The princess argued that people should work according to the amount they receive, and she was angry that the mercenary simply ran away. Marin held the princess by the shoulder. She stammered and explained that she had been looking for her everywhere, and if she had escaped, she would have gotten out of this damn forest a long time ago. Jade spoke into the princess's ear that even though Marin was involved in price manipulation, she always strictly adhered to the terms of the contract. Therefore, there was no point in suspecting her of cowardice or lack of responsibility. All those who came from the official knights had the concept of honor. Therefore, the mercenary undertook to bring the princess out of the forest at all costs. Corona expressed regret, but believed that Marin was unlikely to be able to do this, because it looked like they were all trapped. She said that she and Jade were going to go north, but if there is no way out there, then they will only be able to get out by killing the basilisk. The mercenary was puzzled. She thought and rubbed her chin. She expressed regret, but she believed that she would be useful to them. But now she was exhausted, and she could simply become a burden to them. She asked them if they find a way out, leave her and leave, and come back unless there is no way out. She suggested that they develop a plan. Jade asked what kind of nonsense she was talking about. He doubted that by that time she would even be able to remain alive. The girl claimed that the guy, even in the face of death, still had the same bad character. The princess, realizing that there would be no end to this dispute, ordered both to close their mouths. She told Marin that if she went straight along this road, she would come across a hut. She asked to take Zelda there and ask for help. She said that an old magician named Sonia lives there. What if the mercenary says that she is Eclipse's companion? Then the woman will undertake to help them. Marin thanked her for the tip, and she asked how Miss knew that guy. She believed that he was not particularly reliable, pointing her finger at him. The princess assured that everything was fine, that in any case he would not dare to do anything bad to her. After all, she couldn't leave him here. And the guy silently scolded the mercenary for her slowness. Jade said that since the conversation was already over, he suggested that they hurry up and set off on their journey to the north. Marin ordered him to properly accompany her client. The mercenary asked him not to sully the name of his family. The girl asked how much longer. The guy assured her that they were almost there. I asked if it was hard for her. The sun was setting, painting the clouds in warm colors. Jade began to fuss over the princess. He asked if she was injured. He offered to rest a little, looking into her eyes. The princess pursed her lips in indignation. She began to reproach him for continuing to treat her like a child. That if she was really worried so much, she offered to take herself with her and carry her forward. The mercenary looked around warily. He argued that if he had the opportunity to make it smaller and put it in his bosom, it would work out great. And he no longer wanted to tie her up like before. The princess began to push him in the back to make him walk faster. She told him to shut up already and go quickly, and she can take care of herself. Jade was attracted by the rustling sound. He grabbed the girl by the hand and dragged her along. She didn't understand what happened and swore at him. The guy pulled her to him and covered her mouth with his hand. He asked her to breathe more slowly, and the tip of a scaled tail stretched past them. He asked from that moment on, no matter what happened, not to scream. He reported that there was a snake right behind them. But it seemed to him that he was sleeping. They were squatting under a tree. The mercenary asked the girl to give him the sword and quietly advance at a crawl. When she looked at the forest beyond the serpent, she saw a gap, and I thought that this was definitely the way out, and she was glad that the northern border was still open. The princess looked back, calling out to Jade, but I saw that he was secured by the leg with a plant lash. He asked her with a sign to remain quiet. He whispered to her not to come too close, otherwise the snake might wake up. In that case, they could both die. The guy looked resolutely at the princess. He assured her that they simply had no other options, so that she leaves him and leaves. And the girl was confused. She asked the guy with surprise that he was just going to die here after being captured. Jade assured her that this was a man-eating plant. It is too strong and a knife will not take it. The mercenary assured her that by trying to get him out, she was only risking her life without hope of saving both of them. Kirona argued that since he had been here often, he should know a way to escape. The guy pursed his lips. He assured the princess that regardless of skill, anyone could die here. Therefore, he hurried her to get up and run away from here. He reminded her that the exit would not remain open forever. Kirona knew that the guy made the decision not for her sake, but was a cold-blooded calculation. It was better to die alone than two. The situation was hopeless. The princess stood up. She definitely did not intend to die so stupidly. Rather than save the mercenary, she decided to survive herself. And Kirona did not consider his proposal to be self-sacrifice. She decisively headed towards the exit from the forest. She convinced herself that Jade was simply unlucky. The princess remembered playing chess with the Empress, and then her mother taught her that when you give up something, do it without regret. After all, she was the main piece on the board, and the life of the first princess is more significant than any other. This was the role of the queen on the chessboard. The mother instructed her daughter to give up her figures without hesitation, both in the game on the board with pieces and in life with people. Jade couldn't understand why the girl had returned and what she was even planning to do. The princess stuck the dagger in and began to cut the plant's vine. She said she wouldn't leave on her own. Kirona looked at him resolutely and assured him that she would not leave anyone. Then the growl of a disturbed snake was heard. The guy asked the girl to run. She made every effort to free her companion and escape only with him. Now the last lash has been neutralized. The princess assured the guy that he should go with her. She argued that she would not leave other pieces, even if she risked losing the entire game. She ordered Jade to quickly run away from here. The basilisk has already noticed the arrogant and fearless people. He approached them with great speed, emitting frightening and will-paralyzing sounds. The princess ran without looking back, dragging the mercenary by the hand. He tried to look back as he walked. His cloak fluttered as he ran fast. Kirona realized in this forest that all lives were equal. That's why she won't leave anyone here. She held the guy's hand tightly. Ahead of them was a mountain river. Jade told the girl that she was definitely crazy. After all, the exit was in front of her, and he could not understand why she refused a completely logical decision in that situation. She replied that he started grumbling too early. They both rested and regained their breath on the riverbank. The princess stood up. She claimed that the basilisk was still nearby. Jade was surprised. The girl argued that if she wants to live, she needs to jump into the fast-flowing water of the river. The guy hesitated. Then the princess said that she would do it first. Jade asked her to stop. But the girl was already flying from the high bank into the stream of a mountain river, with fast currents and raging rapids. The mercenary asked himself what kind of stubborn and risky princess she was. He himself closed his eyes and jumped after Kirona into the raging stream. skillfully grouping himself for a successful dive. The mercenary assured himself that he had done everything in his power. He told her, "Go away," gave her a chance. And now she jumped first and lost consciousness. The princess lay motionless on the ground. The guy reproached her that she should have run to the exit and not recklessly jump off the cliff. He said that she was stupid and compassionate. Streams of river water flowed from his hair and face. He thought that because of her features, which were uncharacteristic of royalty, the empress abandoned her daughter and abandoned her. The guy told her that she didn't want to die, and the one who said so should not act so stupidly. Reminded her that she was not a knight. We must protect her, and not vice versa. Jade carried the girl on his back, striding along the path. He wondered what princess would save a mercenary, and he couldn't understand why she fainted, although she had recently jumped into the river. The mercenary was surprised why the girl became so hot. Her head lay limply on his shoulder, and then he remembered how she asked her to untie her, assuring her that she would not run away because she was too weak. The guy was puzzled. He guessed that the princess might indeed be ill, and her fever wasn't just due to her falling into the water. He walked and thought to himself, both the princess and her entire imperial family were simply crazy. On the way, already at night, they came across some abandoned building. The guy decided for the sake of safety to stop there for the night and at least take a little rest. The girl made indistinct sounds in her sleep. Then he could make out cold. The princess was lying on the floor, covered with his cloak and pulling him towards her. The guy agreed that it was really cold. He was angry with the girl and asked who asked her to come back. Through the heat, she asked Eclipse if she was still alive. He answered her in the affirmative. The girl assured him that this was not the first time this had happened to her. She suspected that these were the beginning signs of her illness. Suddenly, something flared. Kirona covered her eyes from the bright light. The guy claimed that it looked like she was really sick. He clarified the veracity of her words about weakness. The girl claimed that initially everything was different, and before she was even healthier than the rest. The guy said that this is how it is now. They were sitting right on the floor. Kirona began to look around and turn her head. She thought that they were in some kind of temple. There were pictures of Yuri everywhere. It looked like Eclipse was his patron. And on the other side there was an image of Mrs. Teresa. Jade urged the princess to stop looking at these ancestors and advised her to lie down and rest. The princess turned to him over her shoulder. He recalled that she herself had told him about the need to kill the snake, and now she decided to die here. The girl asked Jade if he would do this with her. She looked at the mercenary with pleading eyes. He answered her in the affirmative. He suggested that they both try very hard for this purpose. After all, they simply had no other choice. The princess reminded him that he was planning to commit suicide when they first met, and I thought that he would continue to say that it was easier to just die. The guy made excuses that he was alone then, and if the princess wants to kill the snake, then she needs to get better quickly. The girl was surprised. She said he was very cold, and she began to lean on his shoulder out of helplessness. The guy asked what she was going to do. She replied that when she had a fever, the cold helped best, and she leaned her body against the mercenary's side. She asked him to continue talking to her. It doesn't matter what it's about, she just needed to hear his voice. She admitted that it was the first time someone was with her while she was sick. Jade didn't understand how this happened. I was surprised that the girl was kept in captivity. She explained that when she came to her senses, there was not a single soul nearby. Kirona said that everyone was taken away by a demon that came for her. The guy was surprised and sympathized with the girl. He pulled her closer to him. He promised to do whatever she wanted. I asked her to stop talking. She agreed. I asked him to continue. And if he stops and the demon comes, he will be finished. He agreed with her. He assured her that if a demon or anyone else showed up, he alone would defeat them all. And he leaned his head against her. By the way, the princess reported that she thought he looked like Yuri Eclipse from the pictures on the walls. The guy reminded that he was still his ancestor. He noticed the princess's resemblance to Teresia. Jade claimed that in any case, his mother and Dame Eclipse fell in love at first sight and went crazy. And next to them the fire crackled. The mercenary had already begun to yawn. He said that this is why he hates his family. I doubted that serious feelings could arise from fleeting love. The princess argued that love does not arise for any special reason. And the guy believed that the problem was that because of this non-special reason, people turn away from life and their family. Kirona said that love is something like a fever. It suddenly strikes people regardless of their will, making them sick. She remembered her first love. I thought that the feeling did not come at the right time, and it is impossible to predetermine the victim. Her reason doesn't matter. It is invented later. That if you just catch your eye, that's the end. Then you immediately start looking for this person for no reason. And when you look at him, your heart beats faster. And when you see him with others, everything inside turns upside down. Jade asked the princess if she was in love. She directed the question to him. He claimed that if he fell in love after the commotion caused by his mother, he would consider himself a dog, not a man. This made the girl laugh. She agreed, saying that both were true. She replied that she loved him, but she assured that this would not happen again. Jade thought that the guy must have blossomed after receiving the love of the future princess. Even the princess herself says that this is love. The princess admitted that the guy wanted to kill her. Jade was simply amazed. She claimed that love had clouded her mind, and she didn't suspect anything. And the guy felt only contempt and hatred for her. The mercenary called the guy crazy, and the princess agreed with him. But she believed that she herself was not herself, so she could not blame him alone. Kirona insisted that in any case, she also no longer believed in love, and she will never let her capture her again. She asked now to talk about something else, claiming that she was already tired of chatting about love. The guy noticed that her fever was subsiding, and since the demon never appeared, he believed that it was a simple cold. The girl suddenly shuddered. Her gaze stopped and her pupils dilated. She saw a Natalin flower. It was definitely him. The guy was at a loss. After all, a flower could not suddenly grow out of nowhere. There was nothing here after all. He guessed that the princess was seeing an illusion. He told the princess that she could not go there. She shouted for the mercenary to leave her. Jade warned her that it could be a wish trap set by the basilisk. He assured that he did not see any flower there and held his hand tightly. She told him to let her go. The girl claimed that the flower would not wait, and before it fades, you need to pick it quickly. Then the princess saw the empress coming towards her. She asked her daughter why she was still hesitating. She mocked that she couldn't throw a knight off the chessboard. Kirona thought that she had just been in the eastern forest, and Jade Eclipse told her that it was an illusion. The empress grinned. She was making fun of the girl. She laughed at her daughter's doubts that she trusted the mercenary's words. The mother was surprised at her daughter's confidence. She said that since Kirona fell into the trap of desires, then that mercenary is an illusion. The woman was holding a cage with a flower in her hand. She assured that this was Nadalin's way of checking the princess. She wrapped her hand around the top of the cage. The empress extended her hand and called her daughter to her. She assured that she had not abandoned her. The girl assured that she never wanted to believe it. The mother called her child to her. Kirona already wanted to go to her, but the guy grabbed her tightly and they both fell to the floor with a roar. Jade asked the princess to come to her senses. He convinced her that it was all a hoax, that there is neither a flower nor an empress here, that the basilisk is showing her what she so desperately desires. But the girl remembered that her mother warned that this mercenary was an illusion, and she was surprised that he asked to believe him and not his mother. Jade shouted that she should believe him. He held her tightly by the shoulders. I asked her to at least believe in the name Eclipse. The guy swore on the name of his damn ancestor. He asked if Eclipse would lie to Teresha, but the girl considered it a bad joke. After all, he recently insisted that he hated his involvement in this family. Jade assured that he would look for the flower with her, and not this illusory flower, but a real one. He called her to him, convincing her that everything would be fine. Kirona looked back at the place where the flower was. It was no longer there. The illusion disappeared, dissolving into darkness. She sat down on the floor next to the mercenary, realizing that he was the real one, and the guy gritted his teeth at her imperturbable tone. Jade held his head and exhaled excess emotions, told the princess that she almost died. After all, one more step and the basilisk could have killed her. The princess looked at him with a guilty look. She snorted in horror at what could have happened to her unknowingly. Then she began to smile. She assured me that in the end everything would be fine, and she asked not to be so strict with her. The guy bowed to the princess, expressing his gratitude. He thanked her for believing the words of the insignificant mercenary. Kirona held out her hand to him. She insisted that it was the first time she had seen him in such despair, that he even swore to her. The guy confirmed that he swore, but that was the only reason she trusted him. The girl assured that that was not the case. The The princess assured that he was the first who told her that he would look for the flower with her. That's why she wanted to listen to him. The guy was surprised at the veracity of her words. She extended her hand to him. He claimed that this was the princess's order, and he could not refuse in such a case. The windows in the house glowed with soft light. A woman's voice was surprised that Jade Eclipse returned alive. Otherwise, she already thought that he was dead. The guy reminded Zelda that she had actually been dying recently. By the way, she reported that he had intercepted her case. She asked where her hostage was. Jade was surprised that this was a nearly dead mercenary speaking. He asked what kind of hostage he was. I asked her to choose her words. They fought in earnest. Maranda asked them to finish already, claiming that this is no longer important. Zelda laughed. She had already heard in general terms what happened, remembering that she was originally supposed to kidnap the girl, but then the brunette stopped short and covered her mouth with her hand. She sat down on the floor in surprise and cursed. Marin asked what happened to her. Zelda only now noticed the girl's amber-colored eyes. Both mercenaries got down on one knee and bowed their heads in front of her. Marin of the Da family greeted the crown princess. The woman insisted that although she lives as a mercenary for some reasons, but in fact, she is an official knight who has received an appointment. Zelda was surprised that it was possible to change eye color using magic. She admitted that the girl was a real princess, and I asked her what she forgot here. The guy tisked at her. He wondered at Zelda Black's bad behavior towards the princess. She asked Marin if she too was curious, and the old magician was approaching the house. Kirona revealed her secret to everyone, that she is looking for the Nadalin flower, but she preferred to voice the reason for her persistence only to those close to her. She said she couldn't force them, but she insisted that she needed help. That's why she wanted to hire the two of them to help her. The princess understood that for this she must reveal her secret to them, and having heard it, they will inevitably become connected with her. The girl suggested that they negotiate a reward to make it easier to decide. She understood that mercenary work involved the sale of life. The princess claimed that she could pay for their lives much more than anyone else, that all they had to do was kill the basilisk and get out of the forest, and she would pay off everything they owed the mercenary guild. Kirona promised that when they return to the capital, she will grant them the official title of knights. Judging by her face, Zelda really liked this idea. The girl jumped up sharply and said that she would do whatever was needed of her. She assured that she was ready to even lick the floor if ordered. She said that she could start right now. Marin said that she was already a knight appointed by the imperial family. Therefore, she considered it right to serve the princess without any payment. The princess asked Marin that she probably has a reason why she decided to become a mercenary. The girl assumed that the woman needed something. The mercenary clenched her fists. She replied that her daughter was very sick. Her illness is called the Scarlet Messenger. For this reason, she needs a lot of money. Kirona was surprised by this. After all, such a disease was curable. But the woman lowered her eyes and assured her that the treatment cost 100 million Elysium a year, and before complete healing, it should take as many as 3. The princess replied that she was touched by the knight's devotion and would give her 300 million for the treatment of the child. She asked if she needed time to think. The woman fell to her knee in front of the girl. Tears flowed from her eyes. She assured that she would devote her heart to her and would do everything to get her out of the forest. Jade watched the whole picture. He couldn't understand why the princess was throwing money around like that. He believed that even if the princess had nowhere to put the money, the amounts she offered were so excessive that it was somehow even suspicious. Kirona bowed her head. She argued that it would be wonderful if it were possible to buy sincerity. She insisted that she had a lot of money, but very little time. The princess admitted that she suffered from tetra fever, and there have been attacks twice already. And if she did not find the flower before the last attack, death awaited her. The mercenaries were amazed at what they heard. The girl assured them that she had to go east to do this. She claimed that she really wanted to live. In other words, she, like everyone else gathered here, had nothing to lose. The shovel stuck into the hard ground. Marin was digging a hole. She said that the fact that magical tools were found here a century ago makes her curious about Sonia's past. The old woman doubted whether they would be of any use, but I thought it was better than not having any weapons at all. And she laughed at the company. Jade was digesting information about the princess's terminal illness. I asked myself why this was happening, and why does this happen only to him? He remembered how in a dream the princess cried and had a nightmare. She said she didn't want to die. Maranda saw the expression on the guy's face. She hoped that he had not disrespected Her Highness. The guy was surprised by these words. The woman was worried that he was using his little face. She continued to dig a hole with a shovel. What if he suddenly bothered a sick girl? Jade asked him not to compare him to a dog during the rut. In a rage, he grabbed the mercenary by the collar of her cloak and began to wag with all his strength. Maranda claimed that at his age everyone loses control, and the body can react on its own. She was ready to apologize if he swore that he had nothing to be ashamed of. He knew that if they asked if he was absolutely clean, then everything was not quite like that. But these were only physiological phenomena, far from such desires. The princess called out to Jade. She asked if this was the magic stone that Sonia was talking about. The guy held the girl by the vest. He asked her not to touch the stone. After all, no one knew what kind of magic could be on it. She agreed, but she assumed that there was a weapon underneath him. The mercenary asked her to step back. Zelda was approaching them. She was carrying a shovel in her hands. The girl was surprised that digging took longer than she expected. Marin complained that the shovels were very old. Kirona said that she would help too. After all, if they work together, then quickly. But the guy interrupted her. He repeated to her for the umpteenth time that magic is dangerous, and this is an area they can't even predict. What if she is bored? Then let her go to the old sorceress and ask her to tell her about the old days. The women heard the dull sound of a blow and the guy's grunt. He sat on the ground and held his bruised leg. He was indignant at what the princess was doing. The girl grabbed him by the collar. She told Jade that if she told him about her secret, he would help her and not treat her like she was sick. She angrily asked if the impudent mercenary understood her. The princess threw the guy to the ground and stood over him, continuing to threaten to kill him here on the spot. The women stood to the side, moved by the spectacle. Jade shouted stutteringly that let her do what she wants, and now he would prefer to shut up and stand on the sidelines. The girl ordered not to glare at her impudently. He replied that he always had that look. Marin told Zelda that this punitive squad of theirs was too noisy. The girl was having fun in this picture. She asked the woman to stop grumbling and have fun with her. The hole had already been dug and its valuable contents had been removed. They wondered how much such goodness could cost. The princess wondered if this weapon would also be effective against the basilisk. Marin claimed that since the snake had just woken up, then his skin has not yet become rough enough, which means there is a chance. But the woman could not yet say how effective their attack would be. Corona thought about it. The guy handed her the hilt of a sword with a red stone. He asked her to take the weapon. The girl hesitated. Jade assured the princess that this magical sword was better than the one she now carries. Corona claimed that her weapon was straight from the door and it was precious. She claimed that he could use it himself. But the guy argued that it was unacceptable for a person of lower status to use something more advanced than the princess had. This surprised the girl and made her think. Corona agreed and thanked him briefly. She reached out to take the sword by the hilt. The sword flashed and the girl immediately pulled her hand back. The weapon fell to the ground with a crash. It was all electrified. Jade rushed to the princess. Her palm was hot and hissing. He anxiously asked if she was okay and examined her hand. The guy asked Corona if her arm hurt a lot. Marin yelled at Zelda to bring Sonia here. The girl feared that the princess was wounded. Jade was surprised. He couldn't understand. After all, everything was in order. And it was strange to him why the sword reacted this way only with the princess. The girl asked him to shut up already. The sorceress and the mercenary were in a hurry to join the company. The old lady said that the fact is that holy power and magic are a deadly combination, and the princess was a descendant of the goddess. Sonia assured that this sword was a weapon of magicians. She took it in her hands. She said that no matter how you look at it, it turned out that he rejected the princess. The old lady spoke to Princess Corona. That cold blood flows through the veins of magicians, that they are an immoral clan, and they were always looking for a chance to take revenge on the descendants of the goddess Teresia. The princess remembered the book. The girl remembered how she read similar things in books as a child. Sonia said that this is why the princess should beware of her sister, Princess Pine, that magicians can use it to threaten them at any time. Sonia wondered what the Empress was thinking about when she conceived a child from the owner of the magic tower. The princess understood that not all of her teacher's words were groundless. After all, between magicians and those who were not magicians, a long-standing resentment had been accumulating for no apparent reason. And thanks to the agreement of the Empress and the owner of the magic tower, An era of truce began. But the East was an exception, because it was the ancestral lands of sorcerers. After all, they were still not welcome anywhere, to wanderers who have found no refuge anywhere, and the monsters that had the greatest power to everyone who was different from others. The girl remembered what she had told the Empress before, that the damage done by monsters is too great, and that in comparison with them, the punitive troops sent are simply helpless, that the East needs the help of the Empire. The mother spoke soothingly to Corona, that she shouldn't worry about it. But the girl assured that the East is also the land of the Empire. The woman asked to stop asking her questions. After all, she believed that this was not a place that the imperial family could control. She claimed that they fortunately have Pine, who has the blood of magicians, that as she grows up she will become the full-fledged ruler of the East. Therefore, I thought that Corona shouldn't worry about it. The girl reminded that Mrs. Teresia said that everyone deserves to be saved, but her mother assured her that they were only descendants, but not gods themselves. She said that her daughter does not even imagine how much effort is being exerted to save the lands, but all that was returned in response was only the betrayal of the ungrateful. The girl was disappointed. She clutched the hem of her dress with her hand. She told my mother that not only magicians live there, but also her people. The mother looked at her daughter with a tired look and said that she had to go. Corona left all in thought. She did not agree to turn a blind eye. The maid's voice rang down the corridor. She asked Princess Pine not to fall, and at that moment, Corona realized the meaning of the birth of Sister Pine. After all, only when this child grows up and begins to rule the East will the grievances against the imperial family subside. The girl hugged her sister with joy, and she did not agree with her mother that the baby could be significantly different from them in some way. The house of the sorceress Sonia glowed through the windows in the darkness. The full moon illuminated the forest, and smoke came from the chimney into the sky. Corona thought about it, that the one who abandoned the East is now brazenly looking for a way to save her life here. She examined her injured hand in bandages. She assumed that the damage to her arm with the sword was retribution for her indifference to the problems of the East. A man's voice asked her why she was still awake. He was carrying something wrapped in an old sorceress's cloak. The girl could have asked him that same question. The guy asked the princess to leave the house with him for a while. He was going to tell her something. When they went out into the fresh air, he asked first to show him your hand. I asked if the damaged area was okay. Jade touched the princess's hand and she complained that it hurt so much. She claimed that he was still such an impudent person. And every time I become more and more fearless. The guy asked her to carefully apply the ointment that the sorceress gave. I was worried that her wound might fester. He remembered her request not to treat her like she was sick, and now I tried not to go beyond these limits. The girl replied that she felt his concern, so I thought everything was fine. The guy replied that he wasn't worried. The girl agreed that, so be it, and he continued to sulk at her. The princess began to stroke Jade's cheek. She realized that he felt guilty about the incident with her hand. Corona thought that if she tamed him properly, then Jade can make an excellent knight. The princess did not understand why he asked her to leave. The guy handed her a sword with an amber stone on the hilt. The girl hid her hands under her armpits and stepped back. She claimed she didn't want to get hurt anymore. Jade assured her that it was not a magic sword. The guy asked her to notice that this weapon was holy. He said that Sonia woke him up and told him to dig. That's how he found this sword. Corona wondered where the holy sword could have come from here. After all, the distribution of this type of weapon outside the walls of the imperial palace is strictly prohibited. Jade assumed that 100 years ago things might have been different, and someone used it in the battle against monsters, and then hid it here near the house of the sorceress Sonia. The guy said that as a member of the imperial family, the holy power of this weapon would be more suitable for her. The princess dared to take it in her hands. Corona was surprised. The stone on the hilt of the sword began to glow. The mercenary noticed that the sword recognized its owner, but the girl did not understand what it all meant. Jade tried to explain to her that all holy power came from Teresia. Therefore, who else but the crown princess should take on such a role? The girl realized that she was now the mistress of the sacred sword. She asked if the weapon had a name. The guy was surprised that she, like any fool, was going to come up with a name for the piece of iron. He argued that it was foolish to be fond of a sword. The girl deliberately crushed his leg. He immediately took the words back, assuring that he had simply misspoken. The girl asked what she could come up with that was original. She remembered her sister telling her that she looked like a miracle knight from a myth, that she will draw the red lot. And then the princess decided to name the sword Sala, in honor of Hasty Saul, that she was a knight of victory, a knight of miracles, to children who drew the red lot. Jade remembered this myth about the knight and was surprised by the girl's insight. The princess confirmed his guesses. Knight Sala was the seventh and last-born knight of Teresa. She was the weakest and most reckless. The girl admitted that in fact her favorite hero is not Eclipse at all but Sala. The guy claimed that he thought so. After all, her story was to the taste of the princess. That story was about how right before his death, a knight was reborn by drawing the red lot. The girl saw that Jade was upset, and she already suggested that he call this sword Eclipse, but he asked her not to say nonsense. In the legend, Yuri was very jealous of Hasty, because she saved Teresa at the most crucial moment. Jade once again reminded the princess that he was not Yuri. He couldn't understand how you could be jealous of another knight who saved your god. Kirona said that she was just joking with him, and the guy continued to whine that everyone had been making fun of his family for 1,000 years. He called his ancestor devilish. The princess did not understand this. Was there any reason to hate your ancestor so much? After all, there are only 5 families of Teresa knights left in the empire. The guy claimed that he was actually quite embarrassed by this circumstance. He was surprised that his ancestor did so many stupid things out of love. She and the princess sat and had a frank conversation in private. He assured her that he, however, was not going to live like his ancestor and not repeat his mistakes. It started to rain. The guy covered the girl's head with his palm from the drops. He asked Kirona for permission to ask her, and he asked whether she would really die. She answered, "Is it possible not for real?" But she assured him that this would not happen. That if she was going to give up, she wouldn't have gone this far. She smiled sweetly at him, and the guy admired her masculinity. He bowed and invited her to return. I was worried that she might get sick if she got wet in the rain. The princess grabbed the mercenary by the cloak. She asked if he would really keep his vow to her, and she will continue to search for the Nadalin flower until the end. Jade reminded her that he swore on the family name, and he promised to find him with her. The girl invited the guy to enter into an official contract with her. Eclipse's descendant and Teresa's descendant met again, goddess and knight. The girl claimed that a mercenary and an employer did not sound very pleasant. The princess offered Eclipse to become her first knight. She pulled him by the cloak towards her. She assured him that she was doing him the greatest honor. The guy was a little taken aback by the unexpected proposal. Zelda Black rubbed her chin, silently saying that something fishy was going on. Marin claimed that she also really felt that something was wrong. The woman claimed that the tracks were still fresh. I suspected that the basilisk might be watching them. Zelda glanced around warily. She denied it, but she focused her attention on something else. The girl paid attention to those two. She thought there was some awkwardness between them. Marin recalled that the princess scolded the boy yesterday, and of course he's being quiet today. But the girl answered that he was no longer a child, and I doubted that he was ignoring for this reason. The woman assured that the guy's childish side might suddenly show up. The guy wondered where they saw the awkwardness. He assured that they were only making noise in vain. The guy was on one knee in front of the princess. She said that it was a contract after all. We need at least some kind of ceremony. She held a naked sword in her hand. Kirona easily cut her forearm with it, so that a little blood came out. And she told the guy that now it was his turn, handing him a bladed weapon with traces of her blood. He thought that the princess was the first to sprinkle blood on the sword, and he simply had no other choice. He accepted the holy sword from her hands, and I thought how he could have gone so far. Jade also resolutely made a cut on his forearm, sprinkling the princess's sword with his own blood. The girl thought that now that their blood was on the blade, the completion of the ceremony between a member of the imperial family and the knight became like a scene from a myth. It was as if Teresa had breathed life into everything with the touch of her lips. The guy was holding a bloody sacred sword. The princess remembered that the owner must kiss the knight, but she thought that everything had gone too far. So I was just going to kiss the guy on the forehead. Jade said sharply that the princess should now return. After all, he believed that he needed to start treatment. The girl made a sharp movement which alerted the guy, and he simply froze, and she kissed him, holding him by the shoulder. Then she considered it just a misunderstanding, and she found the atmosphere too awkward, and this made her even more embarrassed. Jade touched the princess's forehead when they were about to return. He saw that her face was very flushed and was afraid that she had a fever again. The guy assumed that if the princess was simply cold, he would offer her his warm clothes. Zelda asked if he had taken something by accident. The girl invited Her Highness to tell an interesting story. She took Kirona's arm. Jade told her to back off and get lost. But the princess was already interested. Zelda excitedly claimed that she and Beatrice, the former owner, once made a bet. Eclipse was about 12 years old at the time. The princess asked what the bet was. Jade didn't understand why this would be interesting at all. The mercenary continued. What a bet was that this guy would definitely fall in love someday. Zelda jerked sharply and changed her face. The princess was seriously worried about her. The girl held an arrow in her hand, pointing it at Kirona. Her face was frowning and angry. Jade called the princess. But Marin Da came to the rescue first. She knocked the arrow out of the mercenary's hands with her sword and began to block her attacks. The woman ordered Eclipse and the princess to run away, and she herself tried to keep Zelda's attention, but did not inflict traumatic blows on her. Kirona was surprised that this suddenly happened to the girl. Jade briefly explained that it was a mental trap. It looked like she had crossed his boundaries. Marin continued to hold back the aggression of the mercenary girl. This was difficult for her. After all, Zelda seemed to be out of her mind right now. The guy assured the princess that she needed to retreat quickly. He helped her speed up, holding her by the elbow. Marin fought off the onslaught of the young mercenary. She screamed for Her Highness to leave as soon as possible. She assured that this nimble girl would immediately come to her senses as soon as she received a couple of blows. Jade asked the girl to make a decision quickly. He hurried her and pulled her by the hand. And soon they were running away. And the woman asked Eclipse to take care of the princess. There was a clear blue sky above them. But suddenly they saw an obstacle ahead. The princess swore. It looked like there was a trap in front of them again. Jade held his head. He claimed that the snake had performed a great trick, and the girl guessed that he was deliberately separating them. She firmly grasped the hilt of the sword and urged Jade to go, but the guy was categorically against it. The princess assured that this time she would never succumb to the basilisk's tricks. The girl took on the most determined look, but then the guy hit her in the head from behind, apologizing to her for his rudeness. The princess fell unconscious from the blow. The guy said that she was too risky to leave the forest safely, and understanding her desperate nature, he assumed it would be difficult for her to escape the basilisk's mental trap. Jade easily took the girl into his arms. He spoke as if to himself, that they really need to move on. The guy moved forward decisively. He found himself in a room in some castle. The voice claimed that game had entered, but he claimed that this was not the one from whom he extracted the memories. The voice complained that the guy came in instead of his game, but he carried her in his arms. She asked why he came instead of her, calling him crazy. Hissing, he said that he would get the guy's memories and show him illusions. Jade noticed that as soon as he got here, the space immediately changed. He couldn't figure out where they were now. The snake was glad that he was lucky. I caught 2 game at once, he called them fools, threatened to consume both of them, laughed evilly. He said that what the guy wants? He thought the guy was somehow strange. I was surprised that he was alive and not a corpse. After all, how could one not want anything? The snake asked if the guy was sure. He offered money, fame, a girl. I was surprised that such a thing was simply impossible for a person. He couldn't help it. Therefore, for starters, I decided to at least show what I had planned for the girl. Jade called the antagonist a fool. He claimed that no matter how hard he tried, these tricks would still not work on him. The little girl ran and called her mother. She held the hem of her dress so that she wouldn't get tangled in it while running. She showed the book, and she joyfully reported that today she was studying the history of empresses. The woman was holding a child in her arms. She said that her Kirona learns so quickly. The girl claimed that this was quite a fun activity for her. The guy continued to carry the princess in his arms. His face was free of any emotion. He noted to himself that the princess had once been a little girl, and quite cute in his opinion. Then another picture unfolded before him. The girl was on her knees and holding the woman's hand. She asked Emma if it was true that she was going to die. She could not answer the princess. Kirona tearfully begged the doctor to find a cure. She believed that only she could do this. The girl asked why she did this, and why did she get such a disease? She wanted to live so much and did not want to die. The girl asked Francis how important it was to him who she was. Jade guessed that it was that bastard, a fearless idiot who betrayed the love of the young princess. The guy looked at the illusion and couldn't understand. Why did a girl who has everything in this world have such low standards and requirements? It seemed to him that he was even worse than he had previously imagined. Princess Jade's chamberlain looked like he was just asking for a fist, that he was always shirking work. The girl offered to make Francis a child. Eclipse thought that since the princess loved him so much, she probably went to the end. But he thought it strange to watch the princess's love relationships. And then the guy remembered how Corona kissed him sharply during initiation. But he considered these thoughts to be useless. The voice laughed. He noticed that his victim was not without desires after all. And in such a short period of time, he also acquired something valuable. He said that he was also a man. And it couldn't have been any other way. Jade told him not to talk nonsense. Indeed, in this case, the monster would have locked him in its trap long ago. He replied that the desire was simply too weak, and he can't use it yet. But things could change a lot. After all, someday it will grow and swallow the heart. We just had to wait. The guy told the princess that they were almost there, and he suggested to himself to get out of here as quickly as possible. The voice urged Jade to look here. The guy quickly walked forward. The illusion showed the girl hugging a horse. She said that she shouldn't have turned away from herself just because others abandoned her. But she didn't care about the others. She wasn't going to die that easily. The girl spoke kindly and confidently to the noble animal, that she was going to find a cure and save herself. Jade told himself that he really had no intention of getting involved with this troublesome princess seriously. After all, he knew that he would worry about her if he penetrated and understood her herself. He believed that it would be good if life were an object that could be bought or sold. After all, then he could sell his life to the princess. Life meant nothing to Jade, but for the princess it was extremely valuable. He paused, observing the illusion. The serpent claimed that this was love. Once a guy is ready to give his life for a girl, but Jade denied that he would give his life. He clarified that maybe he would sell it. The voice urged Jade Eclipse to watch carefully. He asked if this was his desire. He argued that it is so common that it is almost trivial. The snake insisted that he thought the guy was special, and he claimed that he was now very disappointed in him. The illusion showed the guy kissing the princess, holding her with one hand. The voice invited James, welcome to the wish trap. But the guy said a firm no. He claimed that he was simply crazy and that this was simply impossible. The snake promised to definitely eat him next time. But the guy walked away from here with the girl in his arms. But he insisted that such a thing would never happen. After all, until now he has not wanted anything, and will not do so in the future either. The basilisk was talking to him about arguing. He announced that something else would soon appear that the guy would be ready to devote his whole life to. Jade asked not to make him laugh. It couldn't be stored in his subconscious, it was just a passing desire. And he knew that desires are different from emotions. The guy didn't consider himself a bastard who had gone crazy with desire, and he thought it would be easy to lock it back into the unconscious. Because if it's not love, then everything will be okay. And he had nothing to fear. He decisively carried away the unconscious princess. Corona suddenly opened her eyes. The guy was surprised that she woke up so quickly. He sat impassively with his arms and legs crossed under a tree. The princess asked what he had already done to look at her so brazenly now. She said that there were few of his past antics, so now he also hit the princess. The girl with an angry expression claimed that she was directly proud of him for this. But he argued that he had no other choice, and he decided that it was better to knock her out. Why wait until she succumbs to temptation and begins to behave like crazy? Corona clarified what kind of trap it was. The guy said it was a wish trap, that he entered her instead of the girl and destroyed that illusion. She was surprised that this was even possible, that Jade was able to leave the enchanted place so easily. The guy claimed that he initially did not succumb to such subconscious games. It seemed that this was his peculiarity. The girl considered this dishonest. She asked if it was because he simply had no desires. The guy answered her in the affirmative, and in his hand he held a piece of paper that had just been taken from the princess's hair. Jade claimed that he always wanted nothing, and that nothing will change in the future. Zelda asked Her Highness to forgive her, claiming that it looks like she's just gone crazy. The girl, sobbing, sincerely repented of what she had done. Corona sat down next to the young mercenary. She said everything was fine, that she just fell into a trap. And what a relief it is for her that they managed to reunite together again. Marin said that it was an even greater relief that the princess returned safe and sound. She also sat down next to him. She sternly asked Eclipse if he had put the princess in danger again. The guy claimed that the woman herself saw in front of her a safe and sound princess in perfect health. The girl thought that this was somehow very similar to excessive guardianship. After all, everyone surrounded her in a crowd. Zelda continued to cry, whimper, and ask for forgiveness. She thought that for the formal courtesy shown to the client, their actions were filled with sincerity. At such moments, you begin to realize how high and difficult the status of a member of the imperial family is. This happened even on this land forgotten by the empire. Indeed, in the minds of the people, the reputation of the descendants of the goddess was firmly entrenched in the imperial family. The monarch was obliged to bestow a reward for this favor, but Chirona's mother never did that. The princess clutched the hilt of the sacred sword. She claimed that when they return, then she will treat them well. She assured that she would try to change the situation at least a little. At least he will give them everything he can. The girl claimed that she was a descendant of Teresia. This means her duty is to protect and love the entire empire, including its eastern regions. She placed her hand on her heart, confirming the sincerity of her promise. Marin informed the princess that she had set traps here in advance. She didn't understand why she was here. The woman explained that this was the snake's hideout. Zelda sat down next to the hole. She got their attention and pointed. Jade argued that judging by the size, they were definitely eggs, and the girl claimed that they have a very thin shell. It looked like they might hatch soon. She offered to destroy all the masonry right now. Corona thought that 5 more snakes might appear soon. And then not only the forest, but also the nearby villages will be in danger. She asked Marin if they could take it hostage. The woman claimed that reptilian monsters usually do not have affection for their offspring, and she thought that these eggs could simply be useless. Corona interrupted her. She said that the basilisk is not a simple monster, and Jade argued that in any case, while they own the eggs, this is a weakness for the snake, but an opportunity for themselves. The guy was holding one of the eggs in his hands. He told the princess that this was their only chance. The girl also agreed with him that they had little choice and they had to try and hope for success. The princess saw the stretching tail of the monster. She insisted that one chance would be enough for them. She firmly asked the team if everyone was ready. Her hand was already on the hilt of the sacred sword. Corona ordered Zelda to never look the basilisk in the eye, even if something terrible happens. The girl assured that she would not make a mistake twice. She rubbed the back of her head and readied her bow for battle. The young mercenary argued that the princess should also be careful, that she needs to stay in order for everything to make sense. Corona understood that this way the mercenary would not receive the promised payment, and Zelda from the tree praised the princess for her quick wit. The princess ordered Marin to hide behind a boulder, and she and Jade were going to hide in the thickets nearby. She also handed the woman a bottle. Marin asked her what it was and why she needed it. It was a potion that changed eye color. Corona claimed that she received it from the owner of the magic tower, and this was the only thing that could prove her belonging to the imperial family. Marin still couldn't understand what the princess meant, and she explained, "What is the payment that she promised? What if she dies? Take this bottle and take it to the owner of the tower or her sister Pine, so that they pay the mercenary the promised fee." The princess, in other words, said that she should no longer be their priority, and if suddenly the situation starts to develop not in the best way, she asked them to get rid of the basilisk and its eggs, even if you have to sacrifice her life in this case. Marin listened attentively and was amazed at the courage of this young princess. The princess continued that if you do not kill the monster, new eggs will hatch, and then the east will turn into chaos. Jade gripped the hilt of his sword. He asked the princess. After all, this is how she wanted to live, and the guy didn't understand her current position. This did not seem like the behavior of a person eager to live. Corona claimed that she was destined to be a ruler, and if everything goes wrong, then in any case she will not be able to live normally after this. Jade was surprised. How can someone who wasn't given a title be crown princess? After all, she herself recently said that she is no longer an heiress. Corona shouted at the guy to stop grumbling and listen to her orders, but Eclipse brazenly declared to the princess's face that he would not obey her. He stated that the task he took on was to save the princess, and she said that her only desire was to live. The girl said to Jade Eclipse that she is the heir to the throne even if abandoned by her family to die. And she forcibly grabbed and pulled the guy threateningly by the collar of his coat. Kirona said that even having lost her status, even without the title and recognition of her mother, even if she dies here, this is how she was born, raised, and come this far. She stated that the crown princess would never leave her people, that the circumstances under which she was squeezed made her. The sky was clear. The company heard the hissing sound of a kite. Jade and the princess were sitting on the ground. She said the snake was already behind them. The guy called her to follow him and pulled her hand. But the princess claimed that she would lure the snake into a trap, and Jade and Marin would attack him from behind. The guy asked her again. He was surprised at her decision to engage in something so dangerous personally. He asked me to entrust this to him, but the girl assured him that she was too weak and would not be able to pierce the snakeskin with a sword. She asked to let her go and resolutely turned away. Jade called out to her, but she already held the snake's egg in her hand and lured it. The monster's eyes flashed furiously. Kirona held a reptile egg above her head. She asked if it was his cub. I asked how important it was for him. It was not for nothing that he hid it so diligently. The basilisk hissed with rage, but the princess's gaze was decisive. Marin shouted at her to run quickly and as far as possible. The woman began to swing her sword, intending to strike the first blow to the monster. The mercenary stabbed her sword in with force. She shouted that the blade had entered and the magic sword was doing its job. The vile reptile writhed in pain. Kirona ran as fast as she could. She screamed at the mercenaries to attack the monster's eyes. After all, a blow to the body could hardly defeat him, only enrage him. But her foot tripped over a tree root, and she fell unsuccessfully, becoming a victim of a bloodthirsty reptile. Jade grabbed the princess's hand, preventing her from falling, but helping her maintain her balance. The girl was a little confused, and the two of them fell on their backs. The guy was rubbing his bruised head. Kirona cursed. The guy argued that her strategy was possible and feasible, but he won't let her risk her life. Jade commanded her to quickly draw her sword, and he himself undertook to be the bait of the basilisk. The girl asked what he was doing. She reminded her of her order not to defend her in battle, but the guy claimed that he did not promise to obey her. Kirona assured him that with her strength she would definitely not be able to defeat the snake. The reptile's tail rustled somewhere very close. Jade assured the girl whether she would pierce him or not. He advised her to just hit him with all her might. He snatched the monster egg from the princess's hands. He commanded her to run and form an offensive line, and he ran away, distracting the basilisk. The princess cursed again. Jade was in full view of the reptile. He called her, showing off her egg in his hands. The reptile hissed threateningly. The guy said that if she wanted to save her cubs, she should have followed him. The guy ran away with an egg in his hand, and the basilisk was catching up with him, almost touching his cloak with its tongue. The sword did not take the thick skin of the snake. Kirona complained that her actions, as she expected, were useless. Something flew over her ear, and then the creature reared up. Zelda's arrow hit the softer skin of the snake on his head. The girl turned sharply and saw a young mercenary on a tree with a drawn bow, ready to shoot an arrow again at the monster's head. Kirona realized that everyone was fighting desperately, putting their lives on the line. Marin hacked at the snake from below, hitting nothing, quickly cutting its flesh. Jade shouted as he ran to aim for the eyes. But the girl understood that in this situation they simply had no chance, and she had to come up with something. The princess suddenly remembered her fencing lessons with the Empress. She told her daughter that she was too easy, and no matter how hard she tries, she will not be able to gain the necessary mass. When asked about her fencing abilities, her mother told her that being as light as a feather does not mean that everything is over, and she handed her a training sword. The Empress advised her daughter to turn her peculiarity to her advantage. After all, the lighter it was, the faster it was, and if you don't have enough strength, you shouldn't waste time. The mother taught the girl that the outcome of the game is decided in a moment. The one who kills first wins, and her task is only to become the first. Therefore, now the princess has decided to strike the monster at any cost. She was looking for a place where she could get into the eyes of the shifty creature. Such an opportunity could appear only for a split second, and disappear when you begin to hesitate. Kirona realized that her action was reckless, but she was always forced to make difficult choices. She took a step closer to the monster. Jade became wary, not understanding what the princess was up to, and she assured herself that if she had found a better option, she would not have gone so far. Therefore, now he will never retreat or give up. The girl, seizing the right moment, jumped on the side of the huge monster's neck. She was preparing to strike with her sword. Jade saw the princess on the basilisk's head. He asked himself how she decided to do this and how she was able to get there unharmed. And he was sincerely surprised where she got such abilities and what she was doing. Meanwhile, the girl was already raising her sacred sword to strike. She clenched her teeth tightly and tried her best to maintain her balance. Eclipse remembered how she cried through her sleep that she didn't want to die. At that moment, the princess seemed so vulnerable and fragile to him, and now he couldn't recognize her. He asked himself if this was the man who feared death. Then the guy began to worry that the girl could have fallen into the snake's mouth. This thought alone made his heart skip a beat. He held the monster egg tightly in his hand. Zelda screamed at Eclipse to brace himself as he pulled the bowstring tight. Moran screamed that he had chosen the wrong moment to dream and made another painful incision on the monster's skin. Jade told himself that he would stop wasting time. After all, he had never been afraid before in his life, because there was nothing worthwhile in it. But now he found something to value so much and someone to fear for. The guy ran as fast as he could with an egg in his hand, and at a short distance from the monster, before his eyes, he smashed it into pieces on the ground. Jade grabbed the sword and rushed at the monster with a scream. He couldn't understand why he was shaking all over. The basilisk danced with rage and pain. The princess struggled to hold onto his neck, hiccuping with fear. The girl saw with horror how Jade cut the monster dangerously close. He shouted to her not to worry about them. The main thing was that she did not fall herself. Kirona even smiled. She thought that the guy would start grumbling and screaming again. She promised that if she managed to escape alive, she would definitely praise the guy. The princess sat astride the basilisk's neck and screamed that she would never die. Her hand rested on the hilt of the sword. She remembered calling him Sala. Hesti Sola was a knight of victory and a knight of miracles. It was Princess Kirona who was calling to her now. That knight was a weak woman, thrown into the forest because of the accusation of a false oracle, that she will supposedly one day destroy Teresia's world. That woman, instead of suffering and dying helplessly, took advantage of a unique opportunity. The princess pronounced the name Sola. She prayerfully appealed to Teresia if she was truly her descendant, asking to see her courage, which she showed. The tip of the sacred sword was about to pierce. The princess, swinging her hand, said that with this sword named after Hesti Sala, let a miracle come true. And she stabbed the monster with the tip. Purple blood sprayed from the wound in the basilisk's eye. The girl was screaming like she was crazy that she was able to pierce him, and the monster shook its head furiously, trying to shake it off. The mercenaries below shouted to Her Highness. Zelda had already seen the girl fall, that she was flying backwards, having lost control. But Jade's reliable hand was waiting for Kirona. He gritted his teeth from tension and tried to catch her, rapidly flying down.